All right, welcome back to the situation. Being that we have talked about going over Darksydephil's history in the FGC, which I actually have something in the works on that, focused on the year of 2006 in particular, and also going over Darksydephil's begging videos of the past. I thought that another thing that we could do that I've expressed great interest in as of late, to be honest with you, is going over some of the old ATK videos, or Ask the King. So that's what we're going to do. I don't know exactly what I'm going to call this yet. More like Axe the King, or maybe Ousting the King, something like that. Ousting the King sounds pretty good, to be honest with you. But this is just something that'll be kind of in the mix of some of the videos that'll be coming out over a period of time. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'd look to take you guys back to October 8th of 2012. Let's see here. ATK Part 1. Let's see. This is on DSPGaming. I don't have the actual title in front of me. I will in just a second. But I'm essentially... since he broke them all up into parts between parts 1 and 3, I'm just going to pick the parts that I feel that are interesting, and we're going to go over those. So that's what these next couple episodes are going to be. If I feel like I need to chain some of them together, I will, and you know, that'll make it a bit more interesting, I suppose. Give us a bit more variety depending on the subjects. You'll also find, if you guys choose to click the link down in the description to go to the original video, he actually used to have timestamps for all the different segments and all the little pieces that he talked about, at least for the most part. He's too lazy to do that now, but it gives you a bit of insight on how much he actually gave a shit about some of these things back in the day. With that being said, I'd like to impress upon you how much he needed people to glorify him in his existence. Yeah, he needed people. He needed Axe the King. He needed the King of Hate forums. He needed the DSP Facebook fan page. He needed people to glorify him on a regular basis, and it shows early on, which leads into where he's at now, and how over time it slowly killed him, or it's slowly killing him, I should say. It's amazing. The thing that he wanted most, which was to be praised, to have recognition, all of these different things, ended up being his downfall in the end. It's absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I can't express that enough. But I hope in this series, if you will, of Oust the King, you'll see it, and you'll see what his views are. And I want you to see how his views warped and mutated in a lot of ways over the years. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, we're going back to 2012 for this one. There are older ones than this, because this is only episode 28. Episode 28. He's up to 80 something at this particular point. So, like I said, we'll put this out as our pilot episode, if you will, and we'll see what you guys think about it. As you guys know, I'm taking some time away from the main channel for a little bit and some of the ongoing nonsense. I will eventually return back to it, as I always do. Also, we have other plans in the works, as trying to do live broadcasts and stuff like that. I'd like to try to eventually get off the pot and eventually get started on all of that as soon as I can, as well as I have some other projects and stuff like that. I will glorify all of you with those exploits later on at a later time and date. In any case, that's what you guys are here for. That's what the situation is, and I will see you guys in just a second. And let's have a couple of good laughs, and maybe we'll pull something out of this that may be considered interesting. Maybe. I'll see you guys in a second.
going on, everyone? I'm DSP, and welcome to episode 29 of Ask the King, the ongoing series where you can submit your questions to me, whether through my website, thekingofhate.com, my Twitter account, @TheyCallMeDSP, or my Facebook page, They Call Me DSP, or the fan page, They Call Me DSP1, and I answer some of these questions, kind of like a fan mail series.
Yet again, just more of the glorification of his own greatness, if you will, and in a lot of ways, the reinforcement that he was looking for and that he desperately needed to continue doing what he does. Phil has this overinflated idea that he was popular, but in a lot of ways, and in a twisted sort of way, and in a lot of ways, I should say, he really believes that he was beloved, if you will. That's what he was looking for. He looks for people to care about him. You liking him and his content is one thing, but he needs you to be invested in him. Not just financially, obviously more than not as of these days, but back in his day, he needed you guys to be morally, he needed you guys to be emotionally invested in him. He needed you really to be there with him, with his ups and downs. And be willing to do whatever it takes to keep him going, not just as a representation, or no, not a representation, but not only as a representative to the audience at large, right? And we all know the situation with all the wheelchair symbols and stuff like that, but also for his own good, essentially. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like all of you guys, but I'm not like you, because I'm the one who actually made it. And the mainstream will never take any of us seriously because they look at us as pieces of shit. So, or they look down upon us, or whatever the case may be. So you guys need to always have my back, because I always have your best interest in mind. Despite the fact that he was taking money behind the scenes from these people, despite the fact that he did endorsements for some of those big companies, and he also turned down a lot of those opportunities because he's an idiot. He's an absolute fucking fool. You can't sit there and be like, oh, I don't want to work with the man. I'm home, I'm all homegrown with this shit, right? Or this is a grassroots movement, while behind the scenes, you're getting free copies, you're getting advanced copies, you're getting test products, right? And when you do decide to disclose that to people, everybody should be happy about that. Let me give you guys an example. Back when Mario Sonic Winter Olympics came out, what was that, like 2019, 2020? Something like that. Certainly, I think that was certainly before the pandemic, if I remember correctly. He's sitting there playing the game. It's clearly not a very entertaining game, and people started to rag on him. Like, man, you really dropped $60 on this game, man? Come on, Phil, you're an idiot. You know what I'm saying? This was dumb. Why can't we just play something else? And as usual, when Darksydephil is backed up against the wall, then that's when the truth starts to come out. And it's like, oh, well, I didn't pay for this game. This game was given to me. This was an influencer copy. Wait, what? I thought you don't like influencer copies. I thought you don't like early releases. I thought you thought it was unfair that people can get free copies of games, and everybody should just put their hard-earned money down to purchase it themselves. I thought you said that you weren't part of that exclusive group. You weren't one of the chosen few that gets these type of privileges and advantages over everybody else. Then all of a sudden he went ahead and shut up about that. So, because he was caught in a catch-22, because he told people that he really wanted the game, but he didn't have the money for it. So obviously people clearly gave him the money for it. But while at the same time, he's playing the other side of the coin, and he is accepting game codes and influencer copies, or whatever the hell you want to call it, review copies or whatever, and he's not disclosing it to them. So so I want you guys to really think now, from the time of, I'd say, easily 2017, up till possibly this very day. Well, not this very day. He's not on Twitch anymore. But that doesn't mean just because he's on... There's plenty of YouTubers who get free copies of games and stuff too. So take that for the grain of Himalayan salt that is. And so let's say from 2017 up till now. Certainly further back than that. But 2017 to now. How many times did this guy get free copies of games and pass it off as they were games that someone donated to him or someone gave him money so he could purchase the game, and he actually pocketed it and played it off like this? And then think about some of those reviews, right? Or giving his opinion at the end of some of those games, right? Because you know how Phil doesn't like to do reviews anymore. And he'll just, as the playthrough goes on, you get his opinions, you get his insight on what he thought about it. And then maybe at the very, very end, right? At the end of the playthrough, he'll give you guys a segment where he talks about what he thought about the game overall. What if that right there is supposed to be his quote unquote, marketing review, right? It's on YouTube. Well, he did it on Twitch Live. It's on YouTube. If anybody really wants to watch it, they can. And that right there is just enough to fulfill his obligations. Let me give you another example. When people do like Raid Shadow Legends or do any type of endorsement, Ridge Wallets, big ups to It's a Gundam, or big ups to a bunch of people. There's a lot of people who do Ridge Wallets now, but I feel like Gundam's one of the first. But anyway, think about Dollar Shave Club, the Sasquatch soap, which is actually some good stuff, by the way. Anything, whenever you see a YouTuber do anything with that, they can put it anywhere they want in the video as long as there's a segment talking about the product, right? Now, granted, it's fair to say that that's two separate things, but you kind of get my ebb and flow with it. For Darksydephil, you could say he would just smuggle it in at the end and be like, oh, if they ever ask, hey, there it goes. It was right there. You know what I'm saying? I put it towards the end of my playthrough so I could just kind of, give people my final vibe. On top of the fact that, statistically speaking, the beginning of a brand new playthrough for Darksydephil, as well as the ending, are probably going to get the most views anyway. So with that being said, that would be particularly good cover. To give you another example before we actually get into the pork steak at hand, think about the issue with the Twitch partnership, right? With the violation of the exclusivity, and now the hateful language stuff. To be honest with you, they got rid of him for more than one reason, but we'll talk about that later. Point being is with the exclusivity situation, most people are like, well, doesn't it seem a bit slimeballish to hit him for that now, even though he's been doing it for a number of years? Why wait till now to do it? Well, one, he was protected. He was protected for a long time. And I'm talking about protection that extends past the whole managed partnership thing. Someone was watching his ass for a very, very long time. Someone did him a great service. Certainly a former fan. Right? Hassan has to be linked in there too in some way, shape, or form. But there was probably a small group of people who were watching his ass, to be honest. And it's if you go back into some of these old videos, into the comment section, for those that are still available, I bet you anything, if you went ahead and started cross-referencing names and whatnot, you may very well be able to find out who that person or persons were. Because I would assume if anybody ended up getting a position at Justin TV, which eventually became Twitch, and in any type of department, I'm sure someone reached out to Phil, or someone said it in a post, or someone said it somewhere. And after a while, as they moved up, and if they ended up getting into some form of administration, or even just customer relations, and they see all these complaints against Darksydephil, it makes kind of sense to be like, hey, assign me to him. I feel like this person is being mistreated. I followed them for a number of years, so on and so forth. Allow me to, I'll go ahead and do my regular stuff for the other, Twitch partners and all the thoughts and all that stuff. But anything that comes off this dude, send that to me. And then you get a few more people who may have been former fans, or who really thought, oh, well, this guy really is being harassed in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, funnel it to us too. And then they become their own little cabal. I'm not trying to make this into some giant conspiracy. But what I'm saying is I'm trying to kind of lay out how this shit worked. Because this is similar to what ended up happening to Cinnabear, who was not the one who was accused of the pedo shit. Another one who's named Cinnabear, who was one of Hassan's favorites. And when she started getting reports and whatever, Hassan had those complaints directly sent to him. Whoever it was who was managing her whatever issues came in went directly to him. He forwarded it to Hassan, and Hassan took care of it. I don't think it's outside the realm to think that could have happened to Darksydephil or anybody else either. You know what I'm saying? Pink Sparkles, Alinity, Amaran, Pokimane in a lot of ways. Supposedly there's like a small coalition of people at Twitch, in Twitch's partnership that watch out for her. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we are here for Ask the King, episode 28. This was October 8th of 2012, part 1. Game length, advice, age of viewers, Street Fighter, and more. This can be found on the DSPGaming channel. The link will be down in the description. Because why wouldn't it be? All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and oust the king, shall we? Hold on a second. Make sure this is here. I have my Snort bucks. We are good to go. Speaking of which, Oust the King is brought to you by Snortbucks Coffee Company, the best beverage company. Make sure to look out for our increasing line of coffees, iced coffees, teas, and energy drinks, smoothies, and soon boba, because I love boba. Don't we all? Here we go.
I know that usually I do this this show on the last Thursday of every month. Unfortunately, now that we're into the hardcore gaming season of the year, there's so much going on with the gaming world. There's so many retail releases coming out that I've just been inundated and bombarded with games to play. And unfortunately, at the end of September, I was unable to film this episode, which is why I'm doing it today. Today's actually Monday, October 8th, 2012. So it's about a week and a half to 2 weeks late. What I want to let everyone know is, looking at the game schedule for the rest of the year, I really don't feel I'm going to have an opportunity to do another Ask the King until December, okay? So sometime in early...
First things first, the fact that he was thinking about doing this he was doing this, like each and every month, is already insane. Like, how much of a dopamine fix do you need? Like, how much do you need people to really stroke you, right? Because I don't think Panda was in the picture yet, to to make you feel better about yourself and validate what you're doing. That you need to do a fucking Q&A segment each and every goddamn month. He could have done one every 3 months, which I guess is kind of what he does now, or he does it every other month, whatever the case. But he could have done one like in the span of like 3 months. Those could have been, instead of getting 3 parts, he may have been able to put out like 10 parts. Or, you know what I'm saying? Whatever. Load them up with ads and be good to go. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yet again, it's a lot of just short-term thinking. He only cared about the money that was directly in front of him, or what he considered to be easy money, instead of thinking about in the long term. On top of that, you see very clearly his dependency on games being good, I should say, being mainstream games, instead of him as the entertainer being entertaining, I should say, which is another one of his major drawbacks. And people pointed this out early on, that, hey, if the game is garbage, Darksydephil is going to flop. If there's a drought in games, Darksydephil is going to suffer. That's why the whole the summer retro series, or whatever that was called, was a thing. He needed to rely on big name games, past or present, to get him through. It's not about him being entertaining. It wasn't that he was white hot popular because people loved Darksydephil. He played all the newest games as quickly as possible, and he got it out there before everybody else. The problem is he didn't grow with the content. He didn't grow with the times. And in a lot of ways, he didn't grow with the audience. And because of that is the reason why he's at where he's at now. And in a lot of ways, and with a lot of the same accusations that is thrown at him for the same thing with Panda, he needs and he demands and he wants a younger audience because he can control them. He doesn't want free thinkers. He certainly doesn't. Does not want free thinkers. He wants people who will essentially stroke his ego on a day-to-day basis. And if they have access to money, he wants them to fork that money over. Outside of that, you really don't have any use to him. He doesn't need people that are going to challenge his authority. That's the reason why he targets who he targets. And he did it early on. Very, very early on. So that's just my opinion, of course.
This December will be the next episode of Ask the King, and excuse me, and then I will probably have some really good questions saved up, because I'm sure people will have all kinds of questions about the games that I played and stuff over the next month and a half. So I've already created the thread on thekingofhate.com for the next episode. It's episode 29, so definitely check that out. You can begin to post your questions up there, okay? Now, I've got quite a lot of good questions this time around, and it's a mix between gaming stuff, personal stuff, all kinds of stuff. So I want to jump into it right away, but there are two common things.
And that's another thing, too, that I should point out, that I'm surprised that he never brought back up. He's handpicking the questions that he's choosing to answer, right? What about all those questions that he didn't end up using, or never ended up, he never got to, or whatever the case may be? Why weren't all of those questions vaulted? And then in like an anniversary Ask the King, like that one big, ATK of the year, he could be like, hey guys, this episode right here, I didn't request for any of you guys to submit questions or whatever the case may be, because all of those previous questions that you guys sent that I didn't answer, or whatever the case may be, I'm going to answer a large amount of them here. You know what I'm saying? Like, he could do, if there's a lot of duplicate questions, then obviously discard them. Or if it's a question that he commonly answers that on a day-to-day, the average person may know, or even someone who who occasionally comes and watches the show would know pretty much offhand, or it could be said in the comment section, he can avoid that. But for some of the other questions that he just didn't find interesting, or he didn't feel like over-explaining, or whatever the case may be, he could have put it in that one large show for the year. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, dedicate like 4 or 5 hours to it or whatever, and do that. And back then, he's recording this all with a camera. He's doing it all on his own time. There was no reason not to do it. I'm surprised, to go further, and not to necessarily give him ideas, I'm surprised he doesn't go back, and because he keeps every goddamn thing, because he's a hoarder for the most part, he doesn't go back and do a retro ATK and be like, hey, I'm going back to the year of 2013 or 2014, and I'm going to pull questions that people had asked me back in the day that I didn't get a chance to answer. Excuse me. And I'm going to answer them right now, or I'm going to answer them in this show. And I think that would give some variety, and I think that would harken back to better times. And now that he is on YouTube, which is essentially the final destination, and this is where Darksydephil and DSP end up dying. Like, DSP and Darksydephil is going to die here. I mean, the namesakes, I should say, not Phil Burnell. Phil Burnell is going to end up passing away in his parents' house, or in the backyard of the Snort fort, whatever comes first. I think that right there would be a great callback to some of the audience who don't watch him anymore, who have grown up, or who have chosen to step away from him. Maybe that would give them a reason to at least come back and watch. I'm not saying they're gonna throw any money at him. I'm not even gonna say they're gonna become fans again, but it gives them that bit of nostalgia that he's been missing. You know what I'm saying? Outside of the usual bullshit that he regurgitates on a daily basis. Just my opinion, of course.
Things that I want to address before we start. First of all, Project 7 and its status. I actually saw a lot of questions in Ask the King, not only from a couple months ago, but just from like today and a couple days ago, asking about when's the next episode of Project 7 coming out. Well, I put Panda Lee in Project 7. I guess you guys missed it, but a couple...
Oh, well, I said I wasn't sure if she was around at this time, but she was. I think she came in at like February of... Right? Yeah, it was like February of 2012? Or at least that's when she was revealed. He was obviously talking to her way before that. But anyway, we were able to go ahead and give some more clarification on that situation. I'm sure someone in the comment section has already brought that up, though.
Weeks ago, in a channel update, I explained to everyone and announced that unfortunately Project 7 is on indefinite hiatus. Due to the fact that Respect the Pact had some changes happen in their life, and unfortunately they're unable to continue with the filmmaking, the editing, Oh
boy, I want to bring this back for you, because you could kind of hear the disdain in his voice when he brought that up. Yeah. And actually, another thing too, I'm surprised that Panda Lee wasn't in Project 7, but excuse me, it is theorized that if the series had gone on, eventually he may have included her in. Why? Couldn't tell you. But, whatever. You know what I'm saying? She was basically nothing more than glorified fan service anyway. If you go back and look at some of those Christmas videos, you know exactly what I'm talking about. She was gyrating in front of that camera in the way she was doing on purpose. And obviously for a reason. I'm not saying that DSP told her to do it. I think she was young and she wanted a lot of attention from more than just the person that she was sleeping with at the time. Anyway.
Project 7 and its status, I actually saw a lot of questions in Ask the King, not only from a couple months ago, but just from like today and a couple days ago, asking about when's the next episode of Project 7 coming out. Well, I put Pandali in Project 7. I guess you guys missed it, but a couple weeks ago in a channel update, I explained to everyone and announced that unfortunately Project 7 is on indefinite hiatus due to the fact that Respect the Pact had some changes happen in their life, and unfortunately they're unable to continue with the filmmaking, the editing, the effects, and all that. They're not able to do it, and we don't have anyone to fill in that role right now. We have no problem with props. We actually have boxes. I'm not even kidding you. I have boxes of props that I had already bought to continue the series. We have ideas for the next several episodes kind of in our heads. We haven't written it down yet, but we know exactly what we want to do. We just don't have a film crew right now, okay? And an editing crew or an effects team. At this point, since we are in the hardcore gaming season, I am going to be far too busy to go out searching for people to do this. And therefore, we put the series on hiatus for now. We're not saying the series is over and it's never coming back, okay? What we're saying is right now there's just no way reasonably that we could actually progress with the series. We'll probably re-explore it in 2013 and see if we can bring it back, but I'll have more information on that in the future. The other thing that everyone's been
excuse me. I will try to find that channel update video, and if I do, we'll go over it. Couple of things. Yet again, you can see clearly, and you can hear it, his disdain over the fact that Project 7 had ended. And he talks about how, oh, well, you know, it's not like we still don't have a bunch of ideas for several episodes. Excuse me. It's not that like we don't have the props and everything like that. They're just not able, Respect the Pact, are just not able to continue to move forward on their obligations. Not that he said that, but you know what I mean. They're not able to continue to fulfill their obligations with moving this series forward. Now, he was willing to spend all of that, air quotes, alleged money on those props, when in actuality, a lot of those props were used, he was able to obtain through the GameStop reward system, like the reward point system that they have. That's how he actually was able to purchase a lot of that stuff, or how he was able to obtain those things. That's the first thing. Secondly, let's go by his logic, and maybe he did purchase some of them. So you were willing to throw down money on props, but you weren't willing to throw down money or throw money to the very people who you depended to keep the series going. Most of you are probably like, well, come on, GTG, you know, Phil's an idiot. What do you expect? I expect someone who's supposedly running a business and has this series that people seem to love in droves, right? That they went to multiple cons to promote the damn thing, to be able to put some money behind it. Because clearly he was invested in it heavily, but he wasn't willing to put any money behind it, which is even more ironic, ladies and gentlemen, because this idiot wanted to buy an office space or rent an office space in Connecticut and didn't do it for various reasons, but he really wanted to. This idiot right here, it complains about a new laptop and desktop. He's made what, over $12,000? Well, he's made way more than that since the losing his Twitch partnership. But he's made certainly $12,000 plus dollars, if not more, with his departure from the Twitch partnership, and still won't get himself a laptop. You're telling me he couldn't buy himself a decent laptop, new, not some used piece of shit out the box. Not to say that everything that's slightly used is a piece of shit, but you know what I mean. He couldn't buy himself a new laptop. He couldn't buy himself a new desktop with all the money that's constantly being funneled in. And it's funny because doesn't he bitch and complain about how this is my livelihood, this is my life, this is how I make a living, this is my business, but yet he doesn't put any money into it. Oh, well, I love Project 7. This is something that I've created with myself and my friends. I've devoted a lot of time and effort to it. I put a lot of money into it, but you wouldn't dish out the money needed to keep the series going. You heard it right here. The time is being put in by him and John and Howard. He spent a bunch of money on props, but we weren't willing to shell out any money to respect the pack. And then we didn't have a backup either. But why would he want a backup when he has these people doing it for free? Why would he want to go out and pay someone else to do that? Even though he came up with a very interesting lie years later about how he went to school with somebody who had or with a few guys who have film experience, and he was going to bring them in to redo Project 7, but there was other things that happened and it didn't work out, which is ironic because that's Howard's story. That's how Howard knows respect the pack. He went to school with one of those guys, and I think another one of those guys was his cousin. You know what I'm saying? John's part of that story is some of the guys who were like supporting cast, if you will, for the or supporting characters, I should say, in Project 7 were some of his friends that he knew. DSP didn't really bring anything to the table except that this right here was based off something he had done previously. But all of the real manpower and shit came from the others. Just something to think about, though. Eventually I'm going to do a struggle against the grease on Project 7, but we'll do a lot more we'll go over a lot of that stuff over here first anyway.
About several people asked about this. Is this a new console, the Ouya or the Ouija? I'm not sure how the hell you pronounce it. The Ouija? I don't know. But it's an independent gaming console that actually was apparently made through Kickstarter. It only costs $99, and supposedly it's going to be insanely easy to develop games for it. Here's my feeling. Is it a great idea? Absolutely. Anyone, I mean, let's face it, everyone say, yeah, I'd love to pay only $100 and get a top-of-the-line gaming console, okay? Do I realistically think that it's going to succeed? I don't know, because now you're asking all of these developers who already make games for established consoles to find a way to develop these games for a new console. Is it going to be an easy transition to have the games that they're already designing, say, for the Xbox 360 to work on this? I don't know, because I don't know the technical explanations behind it. People are saying, yeah, it should be, but I can't say 100% yes. Therefore, I like the idea. I'd love to see how it gets implemented and if it works, okay? We've seen consoles with similar ideas, such as OnLive, that didn't do well and are actually filing for bankruptcy, probably because the infrastructure of the internet in the United States couldn't handle the idea. Will the developers be able to develop their games for this new console, or will this be another failed experiment? I don't know. Let's see, okay?
To be honest,
all right, now
I would have liked it if they had focused the direction of online and of the Ouya or whatever it was called more towards independent developers instead of trying to, and I'm making an assumption here when I say this, instead of them focusing on like the bigger developers and someone like Darksydephil, amongst others, right? So it's not just him. They should have pushed that idea in the public space. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, this is a great opportunity for some of you guys who are up-and-coming developers, right, to maybe have a platform to actually be able to get your games out there. It would have been a great start, I think. And since it was all developed through Kickstarter, that would have made even more sense. That's me just kind of, you know, jumping off the cuff here and whatnot. I'm a cute pup in a sharp suit, so what do you expect? But that's kind of just one of the ways that I would have probably have liked to have seen that situation play out. Yet again, it still kind of shows Phil's codependency on the big studios, on the big developers, to carry the majority of the weight. That's where his success lies from. He was able to piggyback off other people, just like how he says that the detractors, trolls, haters, and critics ride on his coattails. He rode on other people's backs. He spent the majority of his life riding on people's backs to whatever success he can obtain. That's business in a lot of ways, to be honest with you. But somehow, and in some way, it's disrespectful when people do it to him. When people make videos and have his name in the title. Same thing with Low Tier God in a lot of ways. You had to build your name off of somebody else to get to where you're at. What makes you think you're immune to any of it?
On to the questions for this episode of Ask the King. I've got a million of them, and by the way, I forgot to get my stopwatch. Hold on one second, because I definitely need to time myself here. I know I'm already probably a good 3 to 4 minutes in, which I'll check right now. Yep, I'm 5 minutes in. So I'm going to set my clock here for 20 minutes, and I'll stop around that, and then we'll go to part 2. Alright, so the first question is actually from an avid forum user. And here we go, timer. Okay. And his name is Captain Fireworks 2292, and he asks the following. Phil, there is a growing hatred on games with short campaigns that end up being fantastic, such as Transformers Fall of Cybertron, The Darkness 2, and so on. Now, I disagree with Transformers Fall of Cybertron, but actually The Darkness 2 was one of my favorite games of the year, so I agree with him there. My question is, should games with short campaigns have some kind of should games with short campaigns and some replayability cost $60, or should game companies lower the price to be $30 to $40 because of the new complaints of customers saying, listen, we don't want to pay full retail price, we'll either buy the game used for a significantly cheaper price or we'll just rent it. This is an interesting question. It did come up earlier this year when I played The Darkness 2, and I reviewed it very highly. It had roughly, I think, a 6.5 hour long campaign, but I really thought the story was outstanding, the pacing was well done, the gameplay was spot on. So it was 6.5 great hours of gameplay, and then there was actually cooperative campaigns online that you could play, so there was a lot of replayability in the game as well. But when I reviewed the game highly, people said, oh, this is a 6-hour game, there's no way Phil should have rated it this high, he doesn't know what he's doing, blah, blah, blah. Listen, for me, it's a combination. You got quality.
Which is even more ironic because when you look at his complaints on shorter games now, they mirror what his fans used to complain to him about back in the day, which is really, really funny. Hypocritical on his part too, but really, really funny. It's amazing how he justifies things in the moment, but then he has a almost monstrous time trying to defend it later on down the line. Which, if he took more time to just think, right, to just think, and really consider what he's saying, it wouldn't be so bad later on. But because, and I've said this before, he's an emotional bitch and he wants things the way he wants it right away because he's very much a child, is the reason why ass clowns like me can go back and pick all this shit apart. And then eventually someone, you know what I'm saying, throws that shit into his comment section and he's all over the place about it. Or he retcons everything. Or he just ignores it because you don't want to hear it. Like one of the big things at the moment is, let's see. Well, there's a bunch of big things at the moment, but the real thing that Detractor Twitter is on his ass about right now is the, big ups to everybody on Detractor Twitter, is, the hate army situation. How he says it never existed, you know, all of that. But there are plenty of clips around where he called upon them. Perfect example. I know this will eventually be out somewhere, because I know somebody has it. Project 7, actually. I think it was the trailer for Project 7 on the Machinima. It was either on his channel or it was on the Machinima channel. He did a small video doing basically a call to Snorts to come watch the trailer, thumbs it up, so it could get pushed further and further up so more people could see it, and hopefully Machinima could really push the promotion on it too. And he says in the video, I'm calling upon the hate army to come through and show their support. It's a thing. There are t-shirts out there that he made with it. There's a jersey out there. I think he owns one or two of them in a different color, in different colors, I should say, that have hate army. He can run away from that all he wants, but he was part of in the FGC, he was part of a team called Team Hate. You know what I'm saying? And he anointed himself the king of fucking hate. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Yet again, you have to own that. You can never change it. And despite whatever the standards are for the day, that's what you did. That is your past. You lying and saying that didn't happen doesn't help you. Yes, I did that. Yes, I own up to it. You know what I'm saying? Yes, I sold merch with that shit. And he did. He has a bunch of merch out there that says hate on that shit. Or king of hate or king of whatever. You know what I'm saying? But you don't denying it doesn't make it go away.
Got quantity. You need to have a balance.
Which goes back to the whole situation about being a child. A child will deny something. A man will own up to it. Or an adult, I should say, will own up to it.
In order for a game to be worth a full retail price. There are plenty of games out there that have 30 hours of gameplay, but they're boring. They're not fun. They're just addictive. A lot of these MMORPGs that I don't play fall into that line of games. Games where, it's not anything spectacular. There's not even that much of a story, but you get hooked on the fact that the gameplay is so addictive that you play for hours on end. On the flip side of that, you've got games that might have outstanding gameplay presentation, but they end up being pretty short. And the question is, where is the perfect balance? The thing is, for everyone, it's going to be different, okay? For me, as long as I had a really enjoyable experience playing a game and I don't feel like I threw away my money, I think that a game is good. Other people might say, no, I don't have a lot of money and I'm only in it for gameplay. I want a game that when I spend $60, I'm going to be playing it for several weeks. If that's the case, these shorter games aren't going to be for you. But that's honestly why...
You're skipping something. Unless that game has replay value or it has different paths that you can take, which is replay value. Or if it has a co-op. At the end of the day, it comes down to quality over quantity. Darksydephil is... He tries to straddle on both, to be honest. But it doesn't work because he'll bitch about a game not being long enough, like, a couple hours into the game, and then, or even a couple of days into it, and then complains weeks and weeks later that it wasn't, that it was too long. Or he'll say that, oh, well, this game was great, I enjoyed it, even though it was really short, despite the fact that he actually dragged the game out several weeks longer than it needed to be. So you can't have both. It's just whatever's convenient to him. Now, in truth, as it pertains to games, to movies, to whatever, it's either it's definitely a quality or a quantity type thing. Would you, for example, since Phil loves food, I love food, all of us do. Would you rather have an amazing steak that isn't filling on its own? But it was an amazing steak complemented by very good sides. Or would you rather have just a subpar steak, or not even subpar? Or would you rather have a good steak, not a very good, not an exquisite, not an excellent steak? Would you rather have a good steak with a bunch of large sides that are okay, and be happy for that, feeling that you got your money's worth? It's kind of like a tit for tat. You know what I'm saying? And it depends on what you're thinking about in the moment. Maybe not in the moment. I guess it just depends on who you are as a person, I guess. Because I've had some really great steaks, and I can't say I've ever had a lousy steak. I've had some great ones, though. The sides were but but more often than not, the steak was absolutely fucking amazing. And even though I wish there was more, I was content with what I had. I was satisfied, if you will, with what I had. Whereas I've had a couple of lousy steaks. No, not lousy. I've had some type steaks. You know what I'm saying? I've definitely had a few. But the sides were really good. So, you know what I'm saying? You can't have everything your way, I suppose. But like anything else in life, it always comes down to quality over quantity. I personally would rather have a game that is shorter but has a lot of replay value or has a co-op than have a game that's just incredibly long. And once you're done, you're done. You know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, it's great to pass that on to a friend of yours or to a family member and have them play it. But having a game that has a lot of replay value, I think I feel that's important, to be honest with you. Something that's so good of a game that you find yourself going back to. Even if you only play it once a year or, you know what I'm saying, or whatever the case may be. You know what? I love that game so much, I'm going to go back to it. So, I mean, shit, I still play Black Ops 2. And even though it's hacked all the shit, every once in a while you still get it. You'll still find a really great lobby that, you can stick in there for, 45 minutes to an hour before you have to search for another one. That's a good game. And if it wasn't for the hackers and the bullshit and Activision not supporting the game, people would constantly play it. Actually, I think it would still get more... It would have more It'd have a larger fan base than whatever the current Call of Duty is. The only reason why Warzone is where it's at now is, one, they're being smart and they're supporting it constantly. Two, it's free to play on cross platforms, and that's kind of that's it. You know what I'm saying? And to be honest with you, they need to do it that way, because if Activision had a game from, let's say, 6 or 7 years ago that runs completely and totally perfect, that cuts into current sales. But what good is current sales if you have a new game coming out each and every fucking year anyway? And they're all progressively worse than the last. But that's personal bias.
You should look at stuff like my Hateful Truth reviews to figure out whether or not these games are for you. Now, Captain Fireworks is asking, should companies with these shorter campaigns lower the price of the games? Well, if they did sell that game for $30 to $40, there is an increased chance that the people who are buying the game, more people might jump on and buy it because they say, wow, it's only $40. That sounds like a good deal to me. I'll get that over a $60 game that maybe won't be as good. But at the same time, when you're originally selling a game for a cheaper price, some people immediately in their head says, oh, that's a discount title, it must not be that good. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Some people might take it the wrong way.
Which is very true, but then you also have to, not discounting what he said, which is rare for me, but not to discount what he said, but you also have, if you think, well, maybe it's not so good because the price isn't there, which gives you not just an insight to Darksydephil, but to a lot of people. To be honest. Whereas if the price point isn't where they feel it should be, then it must not be good. And that's kind of a shame, because that's how people end up overpaying on bullshit. And then they got the nerve to get mad and say other things are overpriced, and you're very much part of that problem. In any case, if a game is at $40 or even, $20, and you're not sure if it's good or not, or whatever the case may be, you have a bunch of different places where you can go and read about that game. You can watch people review it. You can even test the game yourself and come to that conclusion. If you choose not to do any of those things and you just discount the game outright, that's just laziness on your part at the end of the day. And Phil is one of the premium people for that shit. He just said that, hey, you should go back and watch my April review and decide if the game is good enough for you or not. His review, nobody's review, honestly, should ever be enough for you to go out and run and buy a game. What it should be is something entertaining and insightful to be like, okay, maybe that's helping me build more interest. Let me go off and do some more research for myself. I got your opinion on this situation. Now let me go somewhere else. Let me give you an example. When you go to a detractor, troll, hater, or critic video, right? And you're someone who has only heard about Darksydephil in passing, right? Now, don't come to my video. Go to a video that has quality. But if you go to any video and you watch whatever they're saying, that right there shouldn't be the end-all, be-all for you as a person on what your opinion is of Darksydephil. I know it's hard to believe that I'm saying this, but it's actually the case. Go off and actually do your research. See what he's done. See what's being said about him. See who the people are who say the things about him, and then come up to a conclusion. You should never base it off just one video or off of one thread that you read or whatever the case may be. Go to his live stream, and God forbid, because I would hate to actually tell somebody to do this, and go ahead and watch the fucking pig grease in real time and see if you can come to that conclusion. I know where you're going to come. I know what conclusion you're going to come to, but you go and do that for yourself. And I don't mean that for him. I mean that for anybody. I mean that for anybody. You know what I'm saying? This is my opinion of this person. This is how I came to my opinion about this person. I don't expect anybody to co-sign to that. Go out and watch it for yourself. You know what I'm saying? Because if not, then it becomes that cult mentality that everybody accuses everybody of, to be honest. And Darksydephil isn't man enough to tell you that. He'll tell you, give me a chance. I'm not as bad as you say I am. But he is every bit as bad as people say he is. But you need to come up to that conclusion. I'm not here to make that decision for you. I've already made my decision. I've already chosen to think the way I think. But you yourself need to come up to that conclusion on your own. If not, we're no different than he is.
To that, I'm sure a game like The Darkness 2, I'll be honest, the graphics were great, the presentation was great, the story, the sound, the gameplay. I'm sure that game had a significant development life. And for to lose a potential profit of $20 that you deserve because you made a great game, I don't know if it's worth it. So it really is a slippery slope here. In my opinion,
he makes and that's an interesting point. But let's say this. Let's put this into perspective. So, I develop a game. I put it out there for $40. It's a great game. Everybody loves it. It's getting critical acclaims or whatever the case may be. Oh, but we lost out on that additional $20 on each copy. Okay, that's true. But from a publicity standpoint, from a public relations standpoint, we're in very good standings right now, which means that the second game that we decide to put out, it's going to be, people are going to wait for it. People are going to want it, and people are going to be eager to experience it. That right there in itself is long-term thinking, and that in itself is worth, it was worth the loss, if you will. I would much rather take a hit on some money and put myself in position to make better money or bigger money later on down the line than just trying to scrounge together whatever little bit I can get now, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, you should be looking for longevity. That should be what your goal is. In anything that you do, you should be looking at longevity. You know what I'm saying? Everybody has most people, I should say, have a good run, and they could make a lot of money now if they wanted to. But if they're willing to be a bit more patient, right? Continue sharpening the sword, continue to polish what they're doing, continue to develop the craft as best they can, especially if they're in their own lane. It could be much more beneficial for you down the line. Now, everything's a gamble, you know what I'm saying, for sure. But it's never really a good thing to think in the short term like that, unless this is something that you don't want to do, 2 or 3 years down the line or whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, there should be a platform for you to build towards something else. And while you're here, you should be learning, you should be developing, and you should be bettering your public relations with everybody, essentially, that you can. Don't worry about trying to be like the next person. Be you. And do the best that you can. And continue to show growth. If you do that, you'll go far. If you sit there and try to think you're competing with all these other people, most of these people who aren't thinking about you anyway, you're only fighting yourself. You're only fighting yourself. And you're going to lose like that. Look at Darksydephil. He's a perfect example of that. Because he wanted to do things his way. He wanted everything that everybody else wanted, or everybody else had, but he wanted to obtain it his way. But he wasn't willing to do business, which is really the more interesting aspect of Darksydephil now. For someone who's as money hungry, let's reword that. As someone who's as driven financially, who's as financially driven as Darksydephil is, and I use that term loosely, but you must, if you're willing to beg online, that tells a lot about your personality. So for someone who's as money hungry and as financially driven as Darksydephil is, you would think he would try to take every sponsorship that ever came his way, and he didn't. This idiot, this fucking buffoon, had opportunities to be flown out to test games at the actual studio. He had a golden opportunity to get his hoof into the door and talk to some actual industry corporate people and really build something. You know what I'm saying? Build actual friendships, build actual partnerships. Well, it's debatable whether you have friendships in business. You know what I mean? But partnerships, I should say. He had an opportunity to do all those things, and he gave it up because he wanted to get some day one views on a couple of hot games that were coming out at the time. And here's the thing that's even more crazy, and I've brought this up before. If he was so beloved and he was so white hot popular like he said he was, won't those people wait? Won't those people wait to watch your playthrough or see your review? Why are you so desperate to get all of that stuff out there if you are the industry standard like you say you are? Think about that. That's like if every little thing Darksydephil does, I had to rush to get a fucking video out on it. If people fuck with you, right, or people really want to hear your opinion, then they'll come to hear your opinion. See, what Darksydephil was scared of is other people getting that opinion out first, and then no one will ever want to come and hear what he has to say. Which, if people are really cool with you, right, or if they're really interested in what you say, or enamored or even entertained to some degree, they'll eventually come and watch you. And for someone who had the ad-driven contracts that he had, whether you get those views day 1 or day 10, it's still a view. So what's the problem? Something to think about. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying momentum isn't a thing. But what I am saying is those 3 days I can't remember what the name of the studio was or what the game was for. But I think those 3 days going out there, all expenses paid, plus he was going to get paid to actually go out there and do whatever they wanted him to do. I think that right there was going to be way more profitable than what he ended up with later. You know what I'm saying? Just like the situation at E3. I need to go over that video. Mr. Huff Stuff has it. That shit could have been, incredibly profitable and useful for not just Phil, but for John too. That situation with Machinima, when Street Fighter 4 came out, and they were talking about, hey, we're thinking about wanting to host our own tournaments. Hey, you know a lot about this. You have, you have some questionable relations with the FGC. Maybe we can work out some type of business deal with that. It went completely over his fucking head. He had no clue what that guy was trying to say to him, and he blew that opportunity. And that right there is definitely a video I want to go over, because even as much of a piece of shit as he was at that particular time, Phil still had some connections in the FGC, especially with a few tournament organizers where they could have made something happen. Machinima still had a lot of money at that time and had a lot of reach, especially with Capcom. Darksydephil could have reached out to some tournament organizers and finagled himself into a deal on the front end and on the back end, and as well as getting his name out there again in an announcer, commentator type situation, and that could have been profitable. And that could have really raised his profile. And that might have been able to mend some of the problems or mend some of the issues he may have had with certain people and certain factions within the FGC back then. But he couldn't see that. He couldn't even see just the base opportunity that was in front of him. Everything else is stuff that I've come up with given what his situation was and what could have been worked out later. He blew all that. He blew all of that. And it's amazing. It's amazing how he fucked all that up. And that's just one instance. There's a bunch of them.
As I said, I think it's really going to depend on the person. I think that certain people understand that you're not going to get 100 hours of gameplay out of every game, and you want to have a better gameplay experience even if it's a shorter game, and they think it's worth the $60. Some people are, no matter what, or don't even care about the gameplay, they just want something that has a lot of content because they want to have a game that's going to last them several weeks. And I can see both cases. For me, I'm a combination. I look for a balance, but it's hard for these game companies to hit the mark. I said this during my Darkness 2 review. I really feel that if they had added another 2 to 3 hours of gameplay, that it probably would have been out of place.
I'm sorry, there's something he said that's not sitting right with me. If someone doesn't give a fuck about the gameplay, they just want the game to be really long, then what's the point? Like, really, what's the point? Because why would you want to... If you're not invested in the gameplay, then why the fuck would the game length mean anything to you? That doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. That's like people forcing themselves to play bad games just because they're popular. It's like that. If the gameplay doesn't grip you, then the game being 80, 100 hours doesn't mean jack shit. Unless you're doing it for profit. Just saying. Wow. Well, you guys see what pigs can do.
The story, it would have ended up being repetitive and boring. That the game really hit it at the perfect length for the campaign, and I think they did a good job. So, it is what it is. You're always going to have the people that are going to complain about games that aren't 10 to 20 hours long, But at the same time, you're going to have people who appreciate those games. I'm not sure how Darkness 2 did in sales numbers, but I hope that at least some people did try it out, regardless of the fact that the campaign was a little bit on the shorter side. Okay. Next question is from Bleary Line 7. Now, he has a really long explanation. I'm going to summarize it. Basically, he says, Phil, you've said that lots of people don't subscribe to your channel because you put out so many videos a day, and they don't want to see their YouTube page be flooded with your videos only. But there is this function on YouTube called a show function, meaning you can create a series of videos, like, for example, my week in preview. I could make, even this, Ask the King, I could name it as a show on YouTube, include all the videos in there, and then people can apparently subscribe to this show function, okay? So he asks, why don't I do that? Why haven't I done that? Number one, because I never really understood the functionality of the show function, primarily because YouTube has no help center that really works. All it has is forums that really don't explain anything clearly, has no customer support to actually introduce new functions. All YouTube does is release new shit and not explain it to anybody. So I'm sure there are lots of people out there who know what this.
To make a long story short, it's YouTube's fault, it's YouTube's fault, it's YouTube's fault. Oh, and it's YouTube's fault. Now, I'm sure, like anything else, you could find videos on YouTube that would explain the situation. Or you could just do some fucking research on your own and find out what needs to be done and what doesn't. This is your business, right? This right here is deferring people away from you, your content, your business, because you're putting out too much content. So if you organized it in a better sort of way, maybe that would help you. I don't want to do it because here's the pig translation. You guys ready? That's too much work. It's too much work. It's YouTube's fault. It's YouTube's fault. No one's there to hoof hold me. It's YouTube's fault. It's YouTube's fault. That's essentially what it is. So just like how he won't financially invest in his business, he won't put the time in either. Playing video games, cutting them up into 10-minute segments, and uploading them up on, to YouTube is already stressful enough. Why the fuck do you expect me to do anything else? And he wonders why people clown him for never making it to 200,000, to making it to 450,000, to making it to 500,000 subs. He wasn't willing to put in the work, and he didn't see that to be worthwhile. Just like how he was never able to build a really, really, really large audience on Twitch. After a while, he didn't care to. If he could have just a couple of idiots that he could bleed, it would work. It worked out. That's the reason why he fucking misses Twitch now. He had his personal little fucking hug box that he can choose who gets admission into it or not. They pay the toll. They worship him. They praise him. And after he's done with them, he can throw them away, knowing that they'll come back the next day. It's all he ever really wanted. Yet again, he didn't want free thinkers. He wanted cocksuckers. And that's exactly what he got. He didn't want a big audience. Big audiences scared him. They scare him because he knows that there's going to be deceit and dissension somewhere in there. And he's afraid that they're all going to they're going to bully him, basically. They're going to crowd up on him, and he's not going to be able to do anything. And now I could say, or make the argument that, oh, he's scared that his mask is going to slip. That mask is gone. The only thing is left is the hideous snout that was always under that damn thing. And up to this very minute, the person that you see as Darksydephil is who was always there. He tried so hard for so long to try to keep it up like he was successful, to try to keep it up like he was the victim, like he really didn't do anything wrong, and YouTube fucked him over by switching up the business and hurting him, and how Twitch, you know what I'm saying, they know, or they understand, I guess, that this is his livelihood and they should care. Ladies and gentlemen, Twitch, YouTube, whatever, none of them have to care. This is just like any other job, right? Or even any other career in a lot of ways. You could be fired from one firm, and guess what? You're going to have to go somewhere else. Or you're going to have to figure something else out. Just because you work somewhere doesn't mean they give a fuck about what you do outside of work. You punch in, you do what you need to do, you punch out. Whatever you do with your money or how you spend your money or whatever the case may be is all on you. And if they feel the need to let you go, they feel the need to let you go. You have a right to be mad, But you being mad and putting out idle threats about how if you guys don't rectify this in the span of a week or whatever, angry Snort, you know what I'm saying? Oh, you don't want bad PR or whatever. You think Twitch gives a fuck about PR? You think YouTube gives a shit about PR, especially from a piece of shit like this? Look at those hot tub streamers who are being fucking demonetized left and right. Look at, here, I'm going to go into a bit of an It's a Gundam thing for just a second. But look at the thing what happened with Amaran. I'm actually surprised Alinity didn't ever do a hot tub stream. But whatever. And look at Amaran. Before she got demonetized, literally a couple of weeks before that, she's sitting on a large and floated banana, riding that shit like she damn sure knows how she knows what she's doing. And she's sitting there being like, oh, what do I think about the hot tub streams? Pfft, hey, it's legal. You know what I'm saying? I'm making money off of it. It is what it is. She also said, to her credit, in the long term, it's going to hurt Twitch. It's a bad decision on Twitch's part, but while they're allowing it, I'm going to go ahead and keep doing it. And then weeks later, she gets demonetized. Yes, it was a bad idea for Twitch. And yeah, honey, if you want to go ahead and have those delicious thighs on that inflated banana, you have the right to do so. At the same time, Twitch don't fall first. You do. And that ass of yours is definitely going to break their fall. It may not necessarily break your fall, because she's losing like $50,000 a month or something in ad revenue. But your ass is definitely going to break their fall. And you would think, for someone with her business acumen, and she does, believe it or not, Amaran does have some decent business acumen, she should know that. Now, yet again, profit the way you want to profit in the short term. But in the long term, you're always going to break Twitch's fall. Because Twitch doesn't necessarily need you. You need Twitch. And in truth, Alinity doesn't necessarily need Twitch. She could go to Instagram Live or whatever, or Instagram Live, or whatever Instagram's like little services. She could do that shit over there. She could do that shit on TikTok. She doesn't have to do it on Twitch. She chooses to. And Twitch doesn't have to care either which way. If Twitch has proven anything, ladies and gentlemen, like any business, they eat their own. So if the hot tub meta brought in a lot of money, and it brought in a lot of viewership, and it made, allegedly, a lot of those cam girl sites really, really mad. Right? But a lot of that was short term. And Twitch was only going to get away with that for so long. She should have pulled out early. Anyway, sorry. Excuse me. But she should have pulled out early. She made that statement. If she had quit hot tub streaming 2 weeks later, or just said I'm taking a break from it or a hiatus, she might have been okay. Now, granted, no one can see the future, and I'm saying all this in hindsight. You know what I'm saying? So I'm certainly no Snortodamus myself or anything, but maybe, just maybe, some restraint wouldn't have been a bad thing.
Show function is, and then there's people like me, I don't know what the fuck it is, and I've never tried it, okay? Number two, I don't trust it. YouTube has had functions in the past that I've tried to use that just didn't work. For example, I used to use the schedule calendar function on YouTube. What it was you could have a listing of what games you were going to be playing out. It was really made for comedians, because comedians who were going to be doing stand-up comedy at a club or whatever, you could have a calendar that populated with this stuff. Well, I used to do this with my games. I'll be playing this game on this date, this game on this date. And then for like 6 to 8 months, it vanished.
And they also did it for people who did cooking shows, which Phil did cooking shows, and he claimed himself to be a comedian because he put his videos under comedy. Sorry. Just throwing it out there. So I'm just saying.
It didn't work. YouTube didn't address the problem, never fixed it. Then they finally did fix it, but then changed all the channel formats anyway, so it doesn't even exist anymore. So for me, I would rather just rely on the fact that, okay, I have a playlist. The playlist always gets updated when I put out a new episode of each one of these shows. So you know as a fan, oh, okay, a week passed, it's a weekly show, let me go check the playlist and I can watch it. I'd rather have you do that than rely on some function of YouTube that may or may not work or even be existing in another week. I don't trust YouTube. They fuck with their site far too much. You finally find something you like, they fuck with it and screw it up or take it away. So I'm not going to be messing around with the show's function, okay?
Now, yet again, you know, fair enough if that's the case, right? Fair enough, but at least it would have looked better if he at least made an attempt. He'll talk about all the attempts he's made in the past, but people are asking you to make an attempt now. If it doesn't work, so be it. That only helps strengthen your argument later on down the line. He just doesn't see no value in it. He's been burned once, and he's like, oh, fuck it. It is what it is. But that's ironic because he says, well, look at all these assholes who are out here that hate me and shit. Okay, maybe I did one bad thing. Why can't they just forget it and move on? Why do they have to make all these videos on me? Why do they have to say all this terrible shit about me? Well, then why are you holding on to grudges against Review Tech USA, Pro Jared, the Best Friend Gaming, and all that nonsense? Why do you hold grudges against them? We can take Rich out of that. I can understand why he holds that grudge against Rich. As hilarious as that shit is. But some of these other guys didn't do shit to you. Some of these people didn't do shit to you. Toby Turner. You know what I'm saying? iJustine. Maximilian. Well, he used to sneak diss Max. He doesn't do it too much anymore. But he used to. A little bit. Like, not as blatant as Low Tier God, but he's not the biggest fan of Max personally because he's mad at Max's success more than anything. But what about Markiplier? What about all those dudes? Jacksepticeye. Those guys don't talk about Darksydephil. They know who he is, I promise you, but they don't talk about him. So why do you hold, animosity against them? Same thing with Ninja. Same thing with Drake. If you don't like what they do, that's so be it. But you've actually commented on those people as people. Like to their character and their personalities and shit. You don't know those people. You don't know them like that. You allegedly don't follow them that close. But then you actually kind of do know all their business moves, apparently. Interestingly enough. It's really weird and it's really hypocritical. And clearly it's just jealousy. And you don't think that's not pathetic in itself? You could have had all of the, well, not all of them, but you could have had a lot of the trappings that those people had. You weren't willing to work for it. You were content with what little you did have because it was more than what you had prior. You couldn't see the bigger picture and go above that. You were too lazy and you were too stupid. So it is what it is. And yet again, whether you feel like YouTube's going to fuck you over or not, because obviously that thing doesn't exist anymore, at least he made an attempt at it. But he's not even willing to do that. So it's amazing how all these kids now, right, or all these different people, these man babies and everything else, have to make an attempt. They essentially are employees, because I've said this before. They're basically employees, and they have to do everything in their power to keep Darksydephil going. But Darksydephil isn't willing to do everything to keep Darksydephil going, except for embarrassing himself by begging every day. And even then, it's kind of just par for the course. It's kind of just what I expect. But you could be doing more for your own benefit. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all for, ladies and gentlemen, his own benefit. And he's not willing to do anything at all. And then he has the nerve to get mad when people call him lazy, as if he was anything opposite of that. It's amazing when you think about it.
Next question. Hey Phil, after your Dawnguard playthrough, I noticed that you still have a bunch of unfinished side quests and miscellaneous quests. Any chance for a return to Skyrim in the future, as you did in New Vegas? Thanks, that's from Drew360. It is true that with Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, I did do a later series of videos of those games, like a Return to series, where I did a lot of the side content that I didn't have a chance to do during my campaign playthrough. The difference being here is that when I played Skyrim, I literally tried to do every single side quest that I could.
Isn't he playing Fallout? Well, at the time that this comes out, he should be playing Fallout New Vegas, I think. Because he's supposed to be having like a marathon or some bullshit for it. Whatever. But he's saying that now, for any of you guys who know or follow the lore, he's already played that game like twice at the very least. He's saying that he played it originally, And then the second time he played it, he played it the campaign, but he also did some of the side content. So if there's any hoof holding at all during this next playthrough or whatever the case may be, make sure you guys call him out on it. He played the game twice, and he's gone through, I would assume, most of the milk and crannies of the game or what it has to offer. It sounds to me like just a nostalgia cash grab. Not too far off from what I had mentioned earlier on in this, in our Oust the King, except it doesn't have nearly as much creativity, and he's not putting the effort behind it. Womp womp.
Possibly do during that campaign, okay? Now, I'm fully aware that there's a very small amount of quests I didn't do. For example, the Thieves Guild, I never really completed the quest line for Thieves Guild, because what you're supposed to do is do some of the trivial thieving side quests, and then when you go back, there's like a final ending to it where you get some armor or something. I don't know. But it didn't appeal to me. Keep in mind, I had the Collector's Edition Strategy Guide of Skyrim. I looked through it for all the quests that I thought were the major plot lines, and I completed all of those in my single, campaign playthrough of the game. Unlike Fallout and New Vegas and Fallout 3, where I accidentally skipped stuff or didn't know about stuff and skipped it, I was actively using the guide during my playthrough of Skyrim. I used it to do most of the major stuff. I feel that my Skyrim playthrough for the official regular game is complete. Now, as I do DLCs in the future, I may go back and do other stuff, but most of the side quests and things that are left over are just trivial stuff.
Well, then he doesn't know what complete is, does he? Complete, Phil, means everything's done. That's what complete means. You know what I'm saying? You're just saying that because you feel that everything is trivial or whatever the case may be. Then what was the fucking point of getting the strategy guide? And by that function, it's a shame too that they don't make strategy guides like they used to. But as it pertains to the strategy guides, he purposely spoiled himself, and he wanted to have a leg up on it because obviously he's not a Skyrim's person. He wanted to have a leg up on some of the bosses so he doesn't make himself look like an idiot. This is something he's been doing for years. But he would have tried to play that shit off like, oh yeah, I was learning on the fly, and I'm one of the maybe one of the best gamers in the country. You know what I mean? Natural talent, natural ability. No, he took every advantage he could get his hands on. He was watching other people's playthroughs and whatnot. That's how he started on YouTube in the first place. He was playing a game. He couldn't get through a part, and he went and looked up someone else's playthrough. The guy didn't have any commentary, but he did show how to beat the boss or beat this particular section of the game. And he was like, oh, well, if I add commentary, that'll make me better. So essentially, he started his whole YouTube career on the coattails of somebody else. He never brings that up, though.
Looking them over, I really didn't see anything else significant that I would want to go back and do. So it's a little bit different situation between Fallout and Skyrim, okay? Okay, up next. The next question is from Jolly African American, and he says, Phil, I think you need to he says, I think you need to update and refine the list of questions that you will not answer. The reason I say this is because I haven't seen you reply to legitimate questions such as the following. And he goes to list several questions. So you know what? Since he's saying basically that I've been ignoring legitimate questions, let's go through his list of questions, okay?
I mean, the first you admitted as such. You handpick questions that you feel are interesting or important to you, which means, as we just talked about with the side quests in Skyrim and Fallout 2, to be honest, that everything else was trivial. Now, if it's a question that he's constantly answered before, then that's one thing. But if you really just feel like, yeah, I don't feel like answering this question. Oh, I don't know who this guy is. Oh, fuck all that. Oh, that doesn't interest me. Then that person has a valid complaint. But it's a complaint that he could have rectified later on down the line if he had some forethought. Outside of that, you're kind of just wasting people's time to an extent. You have all these questions that you could answer. You won't, but then you have the nerve to say on each and every one of these Ask the Kings that, hey, I don't have enough questions for the show. Think about that. Really think about that. Especially that can be applied to present day. Because no one wants to use his website, so the majority of questions are on Twitter. There's a lot of questions there, and there's a lot of good ones too. And he won't answer them because he already knows that people know what the answer is, and he can't redcon everything. At least not right away. He's not sharp enough for that, clearly.
Will you consider medicinal cannabis to ease the pain of your ruptured discs? You state that your state actually legalized medical use of marijuana this year. I'll answer that question. Number one, I don't have ruptured discs. Okay, I have a severely herniated disc, which honestly, if you want my opinion, I haven't had another MRI or anything like that recently, but it's been doing a hell of a lot better. I think that maybe the herniation is going away.
Wait. Now, he's right about the herniated disc. I've never heard him say anything about it being ruptured or anything like that. I debate, though, whether the disc is even herniated anyway. I think he just pulled a muscle on his back, but whatever. You said your back is feeling a hell of a lot better. This is 2012. You said in 2014 that your back was really starting to act up, and that's the reason why you wanted to move to Seattle, or you wanted to move to Washington State, because you might be able to get the back surgery, and then Panda was living with you, so she would be able to take care of you until you recovered. The same back surgery that you said your mother had, but it didn't work for her, and that's why she still has chronic pain, despite the fact that your mother's older than you are, and you being younger than her betters your chances of recovery. Huh. I mean, that's just way too much logic, though, so, excuse all of that. Excuse all of that. But you saying that your back was feeling pretty good in 2012? So then what was the hurry to get the fuck up out of Connecticut then, buddy? It's funny that you're starting to do YouTube for a profit, for a living, sorry. You're starting to do YouTube for a living, and all of a sudden your back feels a whole lot better, despite the fact that you're just sitting around playing video games all day, opposed to you sitting down doing paperwork all day at the office. Or at the helicopter company. That's interesting. It's almost as if that bullshit about how YouTube just fell into my lap was just that bullshit. And this thing that you say was your air quote your hobby is what you were always hoping it was going to be. Which means that you really weren't that sad to lose that job, even though you keep bitching and complaining about it, because it's a nice little sympathy point for you. On top of that, it also explains why you never actually went out to look for another job. Because how could you, when the content that you were putting out actually revved up in quantity after you got laid off? With very few, if any, breaks to allow you to actually go out and do a job interview. Not to say that that would have been a hard thing, but you are the very person who has admitted multiple times that you would wake up late, play video games until the early morning and shit, then sleep in until the late afternoon and then do it again. So it wasn't like you didn't have an opportunity to go ahead and put your resume out there. You chose not to. And it's funny how you were so desperate to go ahead and have people click ads, then run the blip, then come back to YouTube and suck off Hutch to get you a job at Machinima, which is also another thing that'll be either a struggle of the grease or it'll be just a broadcast in general where we're going to go over some of that. Because it's real interesting how you had that beef with Hutch. Then you find out that Hutch is actually somebody over there at Machinima. He was a recruiter. I don't know if he was head of the recruiter department, but he was definitely a recruiter for a long time because he's the one who brought in a lot of those Call of Duty heads. Hutch's story is actually a really interesting story if you think about it, and that in the situation with the Call of Duty community at that time. Anyway, you run the Hutch to get a job. First Hutch finds out you get fired, and he sends, and this is after the beef had basically ended up with these two. He ends up finding out you get fired because you made your little pity videos about it. Hutch sends some of his people over to, give you some views and say that, hey, sorry about your loss, but hopefully you continue to keep going. He showed you a fair amount of respect, more respect than you showed him, to be honest. Then you end up begging him for a job and whatnot, and he gets you into the partnership program, if I remember correctly. That's pretty fucking amazing. That's pretty fucking amazing. Semantics, though. We'll talk about that later.
Ruptured discs. You state that your state actually legalized medical use of marijuana this year. I'll answer that question. Number one, I don't have ruptured discs. Okay, I have a severely herniated disc, which honestly, if you want my opinion, I haven't had another MRI or anything like that recently, but it's been doing a hell of a lot better. I think that maybe the herniation is going away because I've been using this back stretcher recently that's building up all the muscles in my back, which is helping to support my back more. And as you know, the past several years, I've adapted my lifestyle, so I'm not lifting heavy objects, I'm not doing lots of strenuous physical activity that may screw me up. So, number one, I don't think I would need it, but number two, I absolutely hate smoking, okay? Not that it's marijuana or anything, I just hate smoking. I did it when I was younger. I tried cigarettes, I tried cigars, yeah, I'll admit it, I did have some weed when I was younger. I mean, who didn't? By the way, I didn't really like it that much. It wasn't anything that like I got hooked on and I would want to go back to or anything like that. But I just hated having smoke in my lungs. It would make me cough, it would make me feel nasty. And my mom also, her whole life was a smoker, and I was in a smoking environment. And now that I'm free of it, now that
that explains a lot. I brought this up before, but yeah, some of your parents' decisions in your childhood explain a lot, for sure. But let's actually nitpick some of this, because that's what I do, right? The smoking thing, I get it. You know what I'm saying? You don't like smoking. There's edibles. That's a thing. It's been a thing. But if he doesn't like smoke, that's cool. To be honest with you, I personally like a really good cigar. So, you know what I'm saying? That's the thing for me. I was never big into cigarettes. I don't think I ever really smoked a cigarette, to be honest. Just never into that. But I do like my cigars and whatnot. I like my cannabis every once in a while, because why not? But I get it. There's a lot of people who don't like smoke. They don't like the smell of it. They don't like whatever. I get it. No problem. So I completely understand that from that standpoint. The thing about his mother and all the chain smoking or whatever the hell that's about, that explains a lot. They really do. Going back to the situation with the herniated disc and the whole thing about how, I chose to basically stop living so I didn't have pain. So, Phil, if you end up fucking breaking one of your teeth, for example, right? And are you going to stop eating solid food? Like, did you really think that was going to be a solution? And because of that his way of thinking, ladies and gentlemen, and because of that solution, look at him now. He's a fucking mess of a human being. You know what I'm saying? Muscles are all atrophied and whatnot. He's in terrible shape. I assume, though I cannot prove this because I'm obviously younger than him and in better shape, I assume when he gets up in the morning, he's racked in pain. It must be bad. Now, is it as bad as like with Wings? Probably not. But I would assume that him and Wings have a lot in common from a pain standpoint. Was it really worth it? There's going to be a level of risk in anything you do in life. But as I said earlier, comparing himself to his mother, you're younger than your mother. You getting that surgery would have probably been successful, and you would have had to keep up with yourself. And I think that's the part he didn't want. I honestly think he didn't want to have to keep himself in shape. I think he wanted to continue to do what he wanted to do and just be what's the animal's name? A sloth. He just wanted to be a sloth about it. And look at how it's affected him all these years later. He's 40. He's 39. He's 40, looking like he's on his way to like 67, 68. Damn near 70. He looks terrible now. And don't be wrong, he looks like a slob here too. Because especially this whole gold tea shit. Like, this shit just doesn't look right. Like, anyway, whatever. But he doesn't look as bad. This is a good screenshot too, by the way. He doesn't look nearly as bad now or then as he does now. He looks horrible now. All because of what? For comfort? He gave up his freedom. And he gave up what could have been a healthy way of life for convenience. Any personal freedoms he had, he gave it up for a type of, I don't know, lazy security, I guess. I'm not really quite sure how to spin that. That's essentially what he did. He gave up, in a lot of ways, he gave up his independence for security. And look at how it costed him in the end. Now, that's a metaphor that you could use for multiple things, to be honest. But for our purposes, we'll use it for this. And what did he really get out of it? There was no real benefit for it. So you have, what, almost 10 years of comfort And what are you going to do the next 10 years? Especially now that you got to scramble, allegedly. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you going to do? Like, Catherine's definitely going to outlive you. Who are you going to go ahead and will all of your stuff to? You don't have any kids. Once your parents clock out, that's that. Everything goes to Catherine. By marriage, by right. Unless you have a prenup, which I'm sure you don't. So what did you think, Phil? When you die, everything just goes with you or it just disappears? And these are, yet again, this right here is why Darksydephil is not taken seriously. That's why you're finding this influx on YouTube. And you can look at Google Stats. Actually, it kind of proves this. You see this large influx of videos on Darksydephil, DSPGaming coming out over the last couple of months. Certainly in the last few weeks. Each one of these videos having a different individual telling you about Darksydephil in a different way. It's a beautiful time. In a lot of ways, you're seeing a renaissance of this type of content right now. Not just for Darksydephil, but in lolcows in general. Because there are a lot of people who don't believe people like him exist. In a lot of ways, you're seeing that same type of interest with Low Tier God and the nonsense he's pulling over there. And, I mean, I'll talk about that in that June the King situation, because I'm going to do a video on it, but there's no way June the King thought that was going to work. There's no way that he thought that was going to get Low Tier God deplatformed, at least off YouTube. If this was Twitch, that'd have been one thing, but YouTube is not going to do anything at all. All you're doing is spreading his name around, which is what he wants. And all the heinousness and all that bullshit, shit, anybody who knows who Low Tier God is, you know what all that is. That's all par for the course. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. You're a big name that now ended up making his name bigger, and now his namesayers, if you will, have even more content. And now they're going to get big too. You fed into the machine. And that's kind of how all of this works. That's why when Phil is like, oh, they'll never be able to cancel me, yada, 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 name someone who actually tried to cancel him. Name someone who tried to knock him out of pocket. There's a whole fucking industry built around these lolcows. Whether you're doing it for profit, whether you're doing it for recognition, whether you're doing it because you're actually legitimately interested in it, whether you've just been watching it for a long time and you want to see it end one day. There are all kinds of reasons to do this or to partake in this or to watch it or whatever, or indulge it. But clearly no one wants to see these people go away unless it's at their own hands. Or hooves in this case. So when DSP says that the only person who's going to bring him down is DSP, he's right. And he will. He will bring himself down. And he'll cry victim all the way to the fucking poorhouse. Or his parents' house, whichever comes first. And that's what I'm waiting for. I think a lot of people are waiting for it. Low Tier God is another one too. He doesn't have a lot of time left, at least as it pertains to his acting career. He has more time than people are giving him. But he doesn't have all the time in the world to be the next Denzel Washington or fucking Morgan Freeman or whoever, Colin Farrell, whoever it is. He doesn't have all the time in the world. He knows that. That's why he's trying to profit off this as much as he can. And this right here has given him a massive resurgence. And I'm not sure if this is something that people have thought about, but I think Low Tier God is coming up on a review for his Twitch channel. Now, this right here puts a massive hindrance on that, which is ironic and interesting in a lot of ways. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I just think this is actually kind of fascinating that Low Tier God is theoretically coming up on that 2-year situation, and all of a sudden this video comes out of showing that he's been harassing somebody for the past 2 years. It's kind of real interesting how that's a thing, right? It's kind of interesting how that's something that's coming about. Now, I'm not faulting anybody on anything. Do what you do. It's just really coincidental that we're coming around that time where if I had to expect Delonte Sparrow is probably appealing to see if he can get back on Twitch, because why wouldn't he? And, all of this is starting to come up. It's really, really interesting how that's a thing. Yet again, fuck Low Tier God. So do what they got to do. I just found that to be an interesting little part of it. Womp womp.
own place for over 3 years now. I don't ever want to go back to that. I hate the smell of smoke. I hate everything about it. So, no, I would not consider using medicinal cannabis. Second question, what kind of video cables do you use? He doesn't specify what I'm talking about. What I can tell you is, for the most part, I use HDMI cables for my PlayStation 3 and also for my Xbox 360. They go to either the receiver and then to the TV, or straight to the TV, okay? For the older systems, such as my PlayStation 2, I've got that hooked up with component cables, and as well as the Nintendo Wii, I have that hooked up with component cables. So there you go. What shoe size do you wear? Well, that could be completely different depending on the kind of shoe. I wish that the shoe sizes would be universal, but they never seem to be. I fluctuate between a 12 and a 13. Yeah, that's right. I know it's huge, but usually around a 12 and a half is where U.S. sizes, by the way. I know Europe has different sizing, but around 12 and a half American size is what I wear. What kind of doorknobs do you have? Well, I have the kind that when you turn them, the door opens.
Okay, we're being a dick here because some of these questions are just unnecessary. The what kind of cables he uses, though, I thought that was going to lead into like a direct capture type conversation. Apparently didn't, but I felt like that might have led into something like that. But the rest of this shit is just kind of whatever. Mr. 512. Give a fuck what his shoe size is.
And or goes into a locking position. I don't know what anyone else has. And then finally, how much does a crosstown bus ticket cost? Well, if I was still living where I lived quite a while ago, back when I lived with my parents, I could probably have a more accurate answer for you. But since I moved to my condo, I've never used the bus. I've had a car. So I couldn't tell you the cost of a crosstown bus ticket here because I don't know, because I haven't used the bus since I moved here. Okay, next question. Let's see how I'm doing on time. I'm doing pretty good here. Okay, next question. Dear Phil, I've been a fan of yours for many years, and you're actually the reason I started my own YouTube channel. My question is, do you have any advice for a new YouTuber who's getting started with a gaming channel? And that's from the gamer J. Lee. I do have some advice.
Okay. For some of you, you're probably thinking, why did GTG decide to go with this one first? There was a lot of gems in my first listen through this, and some familiar names came up, some familiar topics came up. So I thought that it would be rather poetic. Secondly, as of recent, I believe Darksydephil had made sometime, I'm sure it's in a Snort video. I'm going to go over it eventually, because I miss Snort and I miss the content. He talked about how amiibos were a ripoff and all this bullshit and all this case, which is actually one of the many things that made Gamer J. Lee really think about what DSP was saying and really kind of made him come to a conclusion. Like I said, one of many things that made him think, I don't know how I can support all this. I don't know if I can support that idea. I think that's not exactly a fair assessment on what the situation is. What I find even more ironic about the amiibo thing is Darksydephil's dumbass owns one. So what the fuck are you talking about, my dude? You're just as much as part of the problem as anybody else. So anyway, so yeah, if anybody who was thinking that, you caught me. You know what I'm saying? There was, I picked it for a reason. I usually do. So there's some familiar names that come up in these things. So it's an interesting coincidence. Womp womp.
What I would have to say is, first of all, you have to understand that the situation, the status of YouTube right now is drastically different than it was 4 years ago when I started doing video game playthroughs in 2008, okay? Back then, it was like, to find a full game playthrough from start to finish was extremely rare. And even then, when you found one, there usually wasn't any commentary. It was someone doing like direct feed, okay? That's why really I feel my videos took off. When I started doing the camera footage with me talking during the whole time, people thought, wow, this is so different. Today, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and the reason I say that is, unfortunately, now gaming channels have found a way to become partnered through Machinima, through the Game Station, through a couple other channels as well. And because of this, people are now, instead of doing it for the fun of it, they see dollar signs, okay? Which means whenever money's involved, you're going to get massive amounts of competition. So unlike in 2008,
now,
when you can maybe...
Here, I'm going to bring this back because I want you to hear all this in its entirety. And I love the replay feature. But it gives you some insight into what this guy's thinking. Give me a second.
To finish was extremely rare, and even then when you found one, it usually wasn't any commentary. It was someone doing like direct feed.
Okay, I need to go back a little further. The main point I want to make to you though is the fact that he doesn't like competition. He's never been a fan of that. He needs to have an advantage in everything he does. And when the gaming community got big, it started to get big, he fell behind. Because more interesting people came in, with different viewpoints and different ideas that differ from him. Some people shared some of the same ideas, but a lot of people differed. And a lot of those people gained a lot of success doing less, and he couldn't compete. And that's why he stuck to this business plan, if you want to call it that, of playing multiple games and getting them out as quickly as possible, but yet having these really long fucking playlists for one playthrough, when these other people were either beating a game a lot quicker than he was and putting them up in larger patches, or they were editing the bullshit out and getting strictly to the gameplay, to the parts that were important, and gaining hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views of video, and he wasn't. You know what I'm saying? And that's why he stuck to that whole tired and outdated, raw, you know what I'm saying, raw gameplay experience, and he played on people's nostalgia for it. But if you looked at what the industry at that time, and even now to an extent, but I think now it's a little different, but if you look at what the industry was doing at that time, it was outdated. It was unnecessary. It was, people wanted more, especially for the profit margin. Now, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, this is 2012. He's doing this for a living too, just like everybody else. So you can't sit there and say, "Oh, I'm doing it for the love of this, and I'm not about the money and all." Stop. You know what I'm saying? As soon as you had an opportunity to make money doing this, you did it. That's why I never liked that whole statement that him and Rich from Review Tech USA did like to say. And they're one of many people who say this, that, "Oh, I did this for years and I didn't do it for a dime." But you were hoping one day it would be profitable. That's why you kept at it. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in saying that. But that's the truth, though. That's why DSP sat there and inundated his channels with all those playthroughs and watched everything get big. So then when the profit came into play, he literally thought he was going to eat off of DSP Gaming for the rest of his life. He may, which in some cases he might actually do it, because that all those videos that are still monetized do generate money, but he needs the traffic to come to his channel too, and he don't have that. He needs the engagement on his channels to keep people there and keep them active on his channel. He doesn't have that. He's disregarded all of those things yet again. For what, ladies and gentlemen? Say it with me. For comfort. For comfort. YouTube is not going to be around forever. But while he's been on there, or because he never really left, to be honest with you, it could be incredibly profitable. And he should be at over 250,000 subs, 300,000 subs, even at 500,000. And with that being said, now that he has to leave Twitch and come back, he doesn't have to leave Twitch, but I mean, if they don't want you, why would you want to continue being around them? That's like talking to someone who doesn't like you. That just seems stupid to me. But whatever. Some people aren't strong enough of character. If you're gonna man up and leave, why then come over here and actually continue to build off what you already had? And he could have done that while he was on Twitch. He could have done that while he had Patreon for the YouTube audience. Let me explain. Okay, so when he went to becoming a full-time streamer, air quotes, which theoretically he's been streaming since like 2013 anyway, like mid 2013, so he's been streaming He's kind of always been a full-time streamer if you think about it. PayPal should have always been exclusively linked to YouTube. In the instance that, hey, if you can't come over the Twitch, right, because you can't handle the bandwidth or whatever the case may be, I'm still putting stuff on YouTube. I'm still going to keep doing what I'm doing on YouTube that I did beforehand. You can still support me here. And then make Twitch something completely different. All that means is he has to put a little bit more effort after the stream is done, and when he puts it up over there on YouTube. It wouldn't have been difficult. It wouldn't have taken any more time than anything else. This idiot spends all day trying to convince you that he's so goddamn busy, but in actuality, he can't tell you jack shit of what he does that makes him so damn busy. And when he do, it don't make any sense. You want to know why it don't make any sense? Because I can watch someone like Tevin, I can watch someone like Theo, I can watch someone like LSB, Agent Proper, James Lesser do the exact same goddamn thing in less time. And none of those guys do this shit for a living. So what the fuck takes him so long to do it? That part don't make no sense. And see, it goes back to that whole eggs in a basket thing analogy he likes to use. All he did was jump from one platform to another and try to bottleneck everything over there on that platform. And why is that? Because Darksydephil wants to be compensated, he wants to be recognized, he wants to be appreciated for anything and everything he's doing all at once. He doesn't understand what residuals are, even though his Twitch paycheck is the example of what residuals are. You think all the money he makes is off those fucking shitty videos he puts up every single day? The bulk of his paycheck comes off the videos that are already on the channel, not what he uploads. The new shit is incidental. It's the old stuff is what the real money comes from. And he knows that. He's not smart enough or brave enough to tell you that, but he has. He has told you in the past that. But he's not smart enough or brave enough to admit that now. And now his dumbass is on YouTube, just like I said he would. And comments are dead. The likes and dislikes he has enabled, meaning that you can't see what the likes and dislikes are, but he can. So there's no real point in disabling the likes and dislikes, is there? And the comment section, you need the comment section because it shows engagement on the channel. If it shows engagement on the channel, it gives YouTube a reason. It gives them probable cause, if you will, to push your fucking streams. How hard is this to figure out? But see, that's why he liked that hug box shit on Twitch. Because there was no real discovery, so to speak. Not for an individual channel, only for the games that are being played. And at the end of the day, he didn't even really give a fuck about that anyway. He only gives a shit about people who are going to give him money. Those are going to be from long-standing cult members. Big ups to LSB and on the cult video. Or supposedly videos. Supposedly he's working on the next one. So there was no reason to sit on Twitch anyway except for the monetization. And he could have had that on YouTube. He could have had that good on YouTube. To be honest, and I don't know for sure, so you know, it is what it is. If I mess that up, let's go ahead and chalk it up to the many things that I've messed up. Can he not have monetization? Meaning that not super chats, because actually, can you give a super chat when someone's not streaming? Like, if the physical stream isn't running on YouTube, can you contribute through a super chat? That's the first thing. Secondly, he could have had monetization, or he could have had memberships enabled on DSPGaming without actually doing anything on DSPGaming. Without streaming on there, I should say. He can have that. So, and he's already monetized because he monetized all his videos. So super chats and channel memberships could have been a thing on YouTube while he was still on Twitch. And what other effort would he need to put in? Now, from a common sense standpoint, we would say, well, hey, GTG, you already know this because you're about to say it. He should go ahead and put a little bit more time editing some of the content down. You know what I'm saying? He could do marathons, not marathons. He could do, what are those things called? He could do compilations and whatnot, or montages. He could do all of those things. He has the time to do it. Yes, he does. Or he could get Catherine to do it. Yeah, he could get Kat to do it. That's a thing too. Just like he should have done with Panda. Should have put Panda's ass to work when it came to some of that stuff. Whatever. The point being is all of those things are readily available if he chose to go down that route. He won't do it because he feels like it's more work. But for those people, yet again, who cannot support you on Twitch, you have another avenue where they can. They can give you money on Patreon. They could go ahead and do a channel membership on YouTube. And if he can have super chats without actually being on stream on YouTube, I think he can do money on that. Like I said, I don't know. I'm actually asking a question. I'm not making a statement. So I'm not sure if that's a thing or not. But if he could have done that too. And he chose not to. All these different ways to make money, and this guy is a fucking fool because he don't know how to diversify. Everything has to be in the same basket when he's doing it. He needs to have constant recognition and reinforcement on what he's doing when he does it. If not, it's just not worth his time. And this has been proven time and time and time again. And I never will understand why these people won't figure that out. It's absolutely amazing. But anyway, let's go ahead and go back to the beginning. Well, no, let me say one more thing, and then we'll go back to where we're at with this Gamer J Lee question. Competition. It's always been a thing. It hurts him. He hates it. And to give you an even better example of that is look at his whole run in Street Fighter 4. That's probably the best example. There are plenty of videos out there of him bitching and complaining about these new players that came out of fucking nowhere. Most of them are online warriors who went on to make big names in the FGC. And he's like, well, who are they? I've never heard of this person before. They didn't put the time in that we did, yada, 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 yada. Street Fighter 4 saved the fucking FGC. Or at least it saved the Capcom division of it. It saved it. For sure. And I think it's fair to say the FGC as a whole, it helped save. Because Tekken always had a strong community. So does Soul Calibur. Guilty Gear has a dedicated fan base, to say the very least. I'm going to say it definitely saved the FGC. For sure. I'm going to definitely go out on a limb and say that. I'll take whatever... if you feel different of it, by all means, speak your piece. But I feel like it saved the FGC. It really did. And like anything else, there are going to be new people that are going to come in. And it's a brand new engine. Everybody got to start from scratch. And eventually, people like Darksydephil got weaved out. And keep in mind, Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter in general, made DSPGaming. It made DSPGaming. So when we go back to bad business moves yet again, DSP Street Fighter, yet again, another failed opportunity that could have been amazing. He legitimately could have been an earlier version of Maximilian, just not nearly as successful. But he could have been that early archetype, if you will, or someone who's at least chief competition to Maximilian. Him and Maximilian are in two different goddamn lanes. Not only as it pertains to the FGC, but as it has become to video games in general. But Phil could have been right there with him. And there's no reason why, realistically, he shouldn't have been, except for Darksydephil continued to get into Darksydephil's way. To make a long story short. And that's what ended up fucking him. Which is absolutely hilarious. Because DSP Street Fighter could have been incredibly lucrative. It may have not have been as lucrative as he wanted it to be at that time. But if you think about it later on, it could have been massive. All of his fighting game content in one place that's separate from all the rest of the stuff. And for all of those fighting game enthusiasts, whether they're fans of his or not, you can go there. Each one of them is a view, no matter how you look at it. There's at least one ad that those people are going to end up seeing. So there's some ad revenue either which way you look at it. But no, he wanted to keep inundating DSPGaming, and DSPGaming's dead. It's dead. He put so much trash up there, and he tried to bleed so much money off of it that people just got turned off and went other places. Now, I'm not saying that right there would have hindered Maximilian or his rise or anybody else who's an FGC enthusiast to some degree. But he could have been right there with him in some ways. There's no reason why DSP Street Fighter if it was still active, up to this very day, doesn't have at least 100,000 subs. There's no reason why Darksydephil doesn't have a second YouTube play button with DSP Street Fighter on it. There's no reason for that. But I'll break that down at a later time. Let's go back to this original question.
Town bus ticket here, because I don't know, because I haven't used the bus since I moved here. Okay, next question. Let's see how I'm doing on time. I'm doing pretty good here. Okay, next question. Dear Phil, I've been a fan of yours for many years, and you're actually the reason I started my own YouTube channel. My question is, do you have any advice for a new YouTuber who's getting started with a gaming channel? And that's from the gamer J. Lee. I do have some advice for you. What I would have to say is, first of all, you have to understand that the situation, the status of YouTube right now is drastically different than it was 4 years ago when I started doing video game playthroughs in 2008, okay? Back then, it was like, to find a full game playthrough from start to finish was extremely rare. And even then, when you found one, there usually wasn't any commentary. It was someone doing like direct feed, okay? That's why really I feel my videos took off when I started doing the camera footage with me talking during the whole time. People thought, wow, this is so different. Today, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and the reason I say that is, unfortunately, now...
One more thing I want you to take into account. He, even now, he knows his method is outdated. He knows it. You actually hear kind of a bit of a sigh after he said, you know, how he started doing it. And that's when we get into the whole corporate dog-eats-dog world. It's all about money and all that bullshit. To shy away from the fact that he's already using an outdated practice and he could move on to something else, but he won't do it. So please take that into account.
Found a way to become partnered through Machinima, through the Game Station, through a couple other channels as well. And because of this, people are now, instead of doing it for the fun of it, they see dollar signs, okay? Which means whenever money's involved, you're going to get massive amounts of competition. So unlike in 2008, when you can maybe open up...
Did you guys see that tell? I said this in a couple of videos ago. Phil has a lot of tells, right? So when you hear the thing about money and people doing it for profit, Phil has a thing where if you guys ever pay attention to it, you don't have to pay that much attention. That's what you got me for, and you got others. He'll touch his face, he'll touch his chin, he'll scratch his neck, stuff like that. It's almost like him like subconsciously trying to divert his attention. He does it a lot. I've seen enough of his fucking content that he does, especially when it comes to money in some of these strange ass ways. Here, let me see if I can show you again.
Game Station, through a couple other channels as well. And because of this, people are now, instead of doing it for the fun of it, they see dollar signs, okay? Which means whenever money's involved, you're going to get massive amounts of competition.
That's the tell. It's really, now, this is one of the rare times I've seen him do it with two hands. But he does, he likes to do this thing where he puts his hand like back of his neck, or he likes picking at his neck or the side of his face or his goatee, or whatever the case may be. And it's usually around the same reason. Usually finances, certainly money, especially when it directly is associated with money with other content creators. Like, you're not any different from those people. Especially now, at this point, he's doing it for a living. So who the fuck are you to judge anybody for doing anything for a profit? Or for a living, or whatever the case may be. It's yet again an example of him being like, oh, I lost my job, so I had no choice but to do it. But you people, you guys, you made your name doing vlogging. Why don't you just stay over there in your lane, man? You're going ahead and fucking it all up for everybody else here. And that's really what he's been mad about for the longest time. That's why he hates people like Toby Turner, iJustine, everybody essentially who's successful. When it was his own little thing, so to speak, it wasn't never his own thing, by the way, but when it was his little avenue, and he was like one of the biggest names there, he was okay with that, because there was only a few people eating at the table. Now the table's gotten a whole lot bigger, but there's even more people there, and now you actually have to compete for your food, and he don't like that, and he's been slipping. Even at this time, in 2012, his viewership wasn't shit compared to what it was in the year before. Yeah, he's making good money, but it wasn't there. It wasn't like what it was in previous year. You're supposed to get better with age, not worse. You know what I'm saying? And that's why he only had a few years actually, where he did really, really well. Really, really well. Sorry. And I need to get myself another Snort box. And then he starts to get onto this slope, this slippery slope. And that was long before detractors, trolls, haters, and critics come about. Matter of fact, to quote Slow Beef, he was on the decline long before I got to him. I think that's a direct quote from Slow Beef. And Slow Beef was right. He was absolutely right.
So unlike in 2008, when you could maybe open up a cool independent gaming channel and play whatever games you want or whatever, and you might have a chance to be noticed, you're going to notice today there's so much content on YouTube that it's hard to get noticed, okay? And even for me, I'm going to be completely honest with everyone, doing the more popular games like Resident Evil 6, even though I'm a well-known YouTuber, even though I have a dedicated fan base, even that took a while for me to even get decent views on those videos, okay? Because everyone on the planet is doing it. So my greatest
Everybody
advice...
on the planet is doing it. That's the most retarded thing I've ever heard. But whatever. It is what it is. That's what pig-tart shit is. But not just that. He complains in previous videos, within the same year, by the way, and certainly prior to it, that, a lot of these guys got big because they went ahead and reached out to these different gaming websites or gaming publishers, or, gaming media, I should say. And, you know, they formed some deals or whatever, and their videos got pushed through them and so on and so forth. Phil had the same opportunities as those people and turned them down. Instead, what he wanted is he wanted his fan base to go off to these gaming publishers or gaming media sites and push the videos onto them and then have them push the videos. He wanted that stuff out of his hands. You know what I'm saying? It's like a really... It's certainly a political move, by the way. It's something that you see a lot in politics. But he wanted the hands-off approach. Oh, I didn't sit here and ask for this popularity. People believed in me, and they loved the content, and they loved me so much that they were the ones who were sharing it with other people, and then going the corporate route and sharing it with these different companies and these different media personalities and outlets, and that's how I got big. That's what he wanted, and it didn't work because some of his fan base, at least the ones who were willing to make those moves for him, were fucking spurgs. And it's amazing how, because you see it on Kiwi Farms actually a little bit, people are finding these old articles written about Darksydephil and talking about his, you know, his rise from being a humble, just absolute garbage, to being the person that he was then. Being a humble person who lost his job to doing what he's doing now. But yet you very rarely see them push any of his videos. They push the name Darksydephil, but they don't really actually push the videos. And you know what I'm saying? Some of those articles, the videos linked, or there's a video or two links, some of them aren't. And it's like, if you're going to have, or some of the interviews that he may have done back in the day with some of these publishers, why the fuck are you not having them push your content to the goddamn moon? That's what you should be shooting for. You know what I'm saying? Because you're not getting paid for those interviews, I'm sure. So, okay, hey, we'd like to do a piece with you in it, DSP. What are your thoughts on that? Sure, yeah. They're saying that's going to be good publicity. That's going to get clicks on your website. As long as, you know what I'm saying, you guys link my content, you link my channels, and you link some of my more popular videos, I'll make you a list, and I'll send you those things over. We got a deal. And more often than not, they can make that happen. There's no additional work on their backs, to be honest, just for whoever it is that's going to be structuring the article on the site. He didn't push for that. Like, your name, you're not, for most people, your name's not going to be strong enough to just carry the day. You know what I mean? And so, yet again, you would think he'd be, for someone who's supposedly so business-oriented, he'd be a bit more business-savvy when it comes to stuff like that. But whatever. It is what it is. This is what happens when you don't treat... Let's reword that. This is what happens when you don't respect your name as a brand. To make a long story short.
Anyone right now who's trying to get a gaming channel going would be, number one, don't do it for the money. If you're doing it solely for the money, you're going to feel unfair pressure, you're not going to enjoy what you're doing as much as you should be, and your stuff's not going to be feeling genuine, and people might not connect with it. What you need to do is you need to
irony
play games that you enjoy, play games that you love, possibly do games that maybe not everyone else is doing, you know? Maybe doing a Minecraft playthrough isn't a good idea because everyone under the fucking sun has already done a Minecraft playthrough, okay? Try to find something unique. And
that right there is very fucking short, narrow thinking. But, you know, it is what it is. It's the same guy who conned people almost 8 years later, or whenever the fuck he was doing the Minecraft shit, 2019? I think it was 2019. Who conned people into giving him large sums of money so they could bid on him building a particular statue or a message, like a not a message board, but like a sign or whatever in his Minecraft world. So keep that in mind on how crazy this mindset is. Oh, maybe you guys shouldn't do Minecraft tutorials. Really, why not? Or do Minecraft playthroughs. There's so many people out there that eat that shit up that's the best way to go about it. You know what I'm saying? Minecraft is definitely one of those games that you should get in. Just do it recreationally. You'd be surprised how quickly you get a buzz off that. Especially if people link that shit onto fucking like Reddit, because Reddit eats that shit up. Boy, you'd be surprised how far that shit goes.
Hard. Again, like I said, so many people are doing video games on YouTube. But if you're one of the few people who does a playthrough on a game and it ends up being an entertaining playthrough and it's unique for a certain reason, people may watch. And that's really the best advice I can give anyone. I mean, my case of being independent, never associating myself with other YouTubers, bigger YouTubers, the fact that I kind of came up out of nowhere and in 4 years have exploded on YouTube. I got over 200 million views just on DSPGaming. Finally, people actually tallied and said, Phil, of all the channels that you've been involved in on YouTube, you have over 390 million total views and something like over 25,000 videos you've uploaded to YouTube. I mean, what the fuck? It baffles the mind, okay? 390 million views in 4 years. That's pretty good. It's going to be hard for someone to replicate what I've done because the climate has changed. This happens with
But no one should be looking to replicate what you have. First off and foremost, he can throw the numbers at you all you want. There's nothing impressive about any of that. I'm sorry, there isn't. You have over 25 fucking thousand fucking videos, dude. That's something to be impressed about. You have over 200 million fucking views on YouTube, and you got not a goddamn thing to show for it. You didn't save any of the money or any of the residuals from that. It don't mean anything, dude. You can't eat off. You can't eat off that. You can't put that shit in a fucking in a pan for Jasper. Catherine can't put that shit on a plate. So that doesn't mean anything. And the fact that people blew up or ended up growing bigger than he did, doing less work and with less views, is what chaps his ass. And he knows it. Everybody can talk about what they used to be, but what are you now? That's just not going to be your legacy. People are going to look back at it and be like, what the fuck does this ass clown need between 60 and 80,000 videos on YouTube for? That's insane. Over multiple channels? That's insane. To have that many videos out and to have nothing to show for it. So let's go ahead and go with his analogy. This is 2012. He's got over 200 million views or whatever, 300 million views or whatever, right? Okay. You go into 2020 and this idiot filed for bankruptcy. Had 14 credit cards. Had 2 business loans. Has a condo in Connecticut that he still owes money on and will probably potentially get sued for. Has a car in the garage that he barely drives, right? And doesn't even own yet. Lives in a house that hasn't had any investment to its infrastructure. Since he moved in. He don't know what kind of shape that house is in. And despite its increasing value, if he has someone come out and evaluate or inspect that house and they find some of the underlying issues, water damage is one of the main ones I'd like to point out to you, especially in the bathroom with that broken toilet. And if there's like leakage in any place, then that right there is obviously rotting the wood, similar to what happened under the kitchen sink. and all the problems that can deal with mold and everything else, that's a powder keg just waiting to happen. And that's going to be thousands of dollars out of pocket that he doesn't have. Or he does have and he don't want to spend it. It's a mess. But that shit don't mean nothing. It really don't. He was big at a time where it was everybody was just starting off, or this thing was just kind of starting off, and it was really easy to profit. What you have, right? What you have, or what you had, I should say. What you had is one thing. How you can keep that and how you were able to grow with it was another. And what can he tell you when it comes to that circumstance, ladies and gentlemen? He can't. He's resorted to begging. Look at this pompous, smug bastard that you see up there on your screen right now. For those who are looking at the screen, I mean. And then look at him now. Do those views mean anything? Oh, you have so much more than this person, or you have X amount more than this person. Does that mean anything now? This is what happens when you live for the day, when you live for the minute, and you're not thinking down the line. You're not thinking in the long term. And for someone who's driven by profit, you would think that would be something that would be accounted for in some way. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
So don't feel bad if what you're trying to do isn't taking off at first, but what I would say is keep doing what you're doing as long as you enjoy it. If you're enjoying it, it doesn't matter if it ever catches on. As long as you're enjoying what you're doing, it's not a waste of your own time. And who knows, maybe you'll luck out like me and you will make it big. Okay?
He doesn't believe that. But that last part about you may luck out like me and actually get big. But I do agree with him where if you enjoy what you're doing, then by all means keep doing it. But keep improving. But if you like what you do, then keep doing it. It doesn't matter whether one person watches or 100,000 people watch, as long as you enjoy it. Because at the end of the day, there are plenty of people out there who make content that's really successful and they hate it. But they can't do anything else. They refuse to do anything else because they don't want to give up what they have. Whether it's views, whether it's public standing, whether it's money, whether all those things. And that stuff right there, isn't beneficial. They're just shackles that you put upon yourself. And all you're doing is chaining yourself down to something that you don't even feel interested in doing anymore. End of story. If you like what you're doing, then continue to do it. And just get better at it. You know what I'm saying? That's all it really comes down to. You have to like this before anybody else does. You have to pull some type of enjoyment out of it before anybody else does. If not, you're just going to end up like Darksydephil, and you're going to be emotionally dependent, and financially actually. You're going to be emotionally and financially dependent on other people to keep you going. Because you're not strong enough of a person to keep yourself going. Just because you started the fire doesn't mean other people have to stick around to keep your flame going. If you can't do it on your own, then do something else.
Done because the climate has changed. This happens with every industry. So don't feel bad if what you're trying to do isn't taking off at first, but what I would say is keep doing what you're doing as long as you enjoy it. If you're enjoying it, it doesn't matter if it ever catches on. As long as you're enjoying what you're doing, it's not a waste of your own time. And who knows, maybe you'll luck out like me and you will make it big. Okay? Next question. Hey Phil, ever since you and John Rambo decided to simulate the pay-per-view matches for WWE 12, I was wondering if you would host your own version of the Slammy Awards near the end of the year, making your own categories based on surprising and funny stuff that happened during the simulations. And that's from Shadow Thief Omega. Funny thing you mentioned that, because I just mentioned in a channel update... Ooh, what the hell happened there? I just mentioned, not my channel update, in my weekend preview yesterday, that I will actually be doing a special series of year-end videos of the best simulated matches of the year. This year we did so many pay-per-view simulations, we did some exhibition matches, and we really want to kind of highlight and focus on the best ones of the year. So I'm going to be getting together with John Rambo, and together we're going to personally make our picks for our favorite matches of the year, and we're going to do a video series of that for the year end, okay? Next question. Dear Phil, like many other YouTubers, you may have kids who watch your videos. What my question is do you think that children should be watching your videos? And if they are watching this actual Ask the King that you're doing right now, what would you have to say to them? I want to know what your thoughts are about this, as I've been a fan since your Heavy Rain playthrough, and I was actually 11 back then. But now I'm in my teens, and I've watched feeling like I was a part of a forgotten minority of your fan base. Thanks, and that's from Methane. That's very interesting. It's interesting that here's someone who back with Heavy Rain in, what was it, 2009 or 2000, I think it was 2009, but it could have been 2010, has been a fan of mine for several years, is now a teenager, and is wondering what my feelings are. Here's the thing, okay? Different things are good for different people. Some people are mature at an earlier age, more mature than others, and they get the joke. Some people, unfortunately, will watch stuff like my stuff, and they'll go to school and they'll say, fucking shit and cocks and dicks and bup, and that's obviously not what you should be doing, okay? In my personal feeling, okay, it really is going to be a parental decision. If a parent feels that their child is mature enough to handle mature language and jokes and stuff like I do in my content, then let them watch it, okay? But I don't think that little children should be watching. Obviously, I use adult language. Obviously, I have adult humor, sexual humor. That, no, a child should not be exposed to this kind of stuff, okay? At the same time, there has to come a point in someone's life when they have to be exposed to this stuff. You know what I mean? And maybe it's better to be exposed
and they should be exposed to it by you? Okay. All right, first is first. Let's bring that back a little bit. So, it's the parents' fault. The parents should be more responsible, but let's take this back. Let me start over. You should be mature enough to know the stuff that I say in my videos you shouldn't be taking to school and repeating. Then it's the parents' fault, and the parents need to basically put, boundaries up on what their kids should be watching. Then, eventually you're going to get exposed to it, so, you can come to me as the catalyst. Holy shit. First things first, Phil has admitted, especially in recent years, that the reason why he did a lot of his fucking toilet sailor talk, whatever bullshit, this comes from someone who curses a lot himself, he did a lot of that because these kids ate that shit up. Because they thought it was funny, they thought it was amusing, and that's what brought in all the views. So the fact that he's definitely mindful of the people who watch him, but he doesn't give a shit outside of that initial click or that initial donation or whatever the case may be. Jesus Christ, he practically raised Derek, or however the fuck that dude pronounces his name. He practically raised him. So that's a thing. He's been saying goodnight to Derek like he's been tucking him in the bed for a long ass time. One of many, I should say. Yet again, the lack of responsibility. It's always somebody else's fault. It's always someone else's situation. And then it all coming back to, well, you're going to get exposed to it eventually, so you might as well use me. I'll step up, right? I'll step up and be the one to expose you to it. Jesus Christ, bro. The mental gymnastics are insane. Insane. Just say, hey, my stuff is for mature adult. It should be considered mature, or for people who are at least, 16 or 17 and up, and just move off of that. But he can't, because that's the reason why he played all the games that he did. He wanted to snatch up every demographic he could. Perfect example. A couple months ago, I don't know if it came from Reddit or from Detractor Twitter or even Kiwi Farms. It was one of the two. It was one of the three. But someone pointed out that Darksydephil's Twitch channel is labeled for like everyone, and it's not labeled for mature. Now, he's not in any form of discovery either which way, so it doesn't help him either which way on who gets directed towards him or not. But by leaving his channel essentially open to everybody, he's doing that so he can draw the kids in. He always has been like that. He's very much a predator to that extent, in that he's looking to take advantage of young people. And he needs it. Why the fuck do you think he keeps playing all those Mario games? Just for nostalgia's sake? Fuck that. Do you guys remember how... Well, I've got videos on this channel talking about it. But you guys remember how mad he used to get when he couldn't profit off Nintendo games? And what are Nintendo games, or who are Nintendo games usually marketed to? Children, usually. And that in people who have a lot of nostalgia for those games. But mainly the children. And that's where a lot of those views came from. That's why him, Angry Joe, as well as other people were kind of pissed off when Nintendo cut them off at the balls. And rightfully so, to be honest. But he knows exactly who he's targeting. Let's stop. But the fact that he's not showing, at least in this one moment, where he could be a little bit more responsible about it, about his actions, it should tell you, and it should explain why he is the way he is now, to be honest. Sorry, why he is the way he is now.
Different things are good for different people. Some people are mature at an earlier age, more mature than others, and they get the joke. Some people, unfortunately, will watch stuff like my stuff, and they'll go to school and they'll say, fucking shit and cocks and dicks and bup, and that's obviously not what you should be doing, okay? In my personal feeling, okay, it really is going to be a parental decision. If a parent feels that their child is mature enough to handle mature language and jokes and stuff like I do in my content, then let them watch it, okay? But I don't think that little children should be watching.
First off, you think parents are sitting there watching content right there next to their kids? How fucking stupid are you? Not all parents are doing that, that's for sure. I know some probably do. But not everybody. First things first, and first and foremost. That's not a thing. You're a tard for saying that. You're an absolute fucking tard for saying that. You really think there's a parent sitting there watching Darksydephil ogling some digital titties, and you think somebody's mother or father is going to let that happen? Or they're right there next to them listening to that or paying attention to it? No. Their kid is off to the side. They're watching something on television, or they're doing paperwork, or they're doing lawn work, or they're doing whatever. That's the reason why the damn thing's stuck in their hands in the first place. Hey, here you go. Please don't break anything, and just enjoy your videos or whatever so I can run off and do what I have to do. Now, are all parents like that? No. The majority of people who seem to be Darksydephil fans, though, some of them seem that way. Let me give you another example, because I'm good at doing that. We just talked about Gamer J. Lee, and his question was probably the last one, talking about, starting up a YouTube channel. If I remember correctly, when Gamer J. Lee and his father met Darksydephil, I think this is in a video, and it's in a Gamer J. Lee video, if I remember correctly. Gamer J. Lee's father said, yeah, that guy's a complete and total douchebag. Like, he instantly could tell that. And that right there is good intuition. And he probably only was in front of Darksydephil 10, 15 minutes maybe. And if he could deduce that, then that tells you something. Now, at the end of the day, Gamer J. Lee, I'm sure his father was still like, hey, if you want to continue watching his content, no problem. Go ahead and do you, but he's probably not going to amount to much. He wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong. So at the end of the day, the choice to sit there and say, oh, the parents need to take responsibility for that, or whatever the case may be, is you can go ahead and yeef that shit out of here right now. Because that's not exactly the way you should be going about that. At the end of the day, those are some of the same claims that he says, oh, my detractors, trolls, haters, and critics shit on me for that, and they've prevented me from getting opportunities. I didn't prevent you from doing jack shit. You made the decision to say and do the dumb shit you said. I just happened to sit around and fucking make a multiple-hour video about it. It is what it is. At the end of the day, you still did it. If you didn't do it, then this video doesn't exist. I'd make this video about wings. Or some other little cow. At the end of the day, personal responsibility is still a thing.
Obviously, I use adult language. Obviously, I have adult humor, sexual humor. That, no, a child should not be exposed to this kind of stuff, okay? At the same time, there has to come a point in someone's life when they have to be exposed to this stuff, you know what I mean? And maybe it's better to be exposed to it in a way like me, where there's not going to be any nudity, there's not any malicious intentions, versus watching some fucking porno on TV, you know what I mean? Skinamax or accidentally stumbling upon racist content of some neo-Nazi asshole. You know what I mean? Like, there's some bad ways that kids can get exposed to mature content. My feeling is this: it is ultimately the parents'
So it's better that you see me ogling over my models of these fictional women, right? And me talking about that, or it's better that you hear me drop the N-word, right, than someone who has, I don't know, like AB tattoo, Aryan Brotherhood, just in case you guys don't know what that is, have an AB tattoo and shit with the shamrocks and whatnot, calling all these people this, that, and the third. It's better you hear it from me than hear it from those people. Are you okay? All right, sure, whatever. What the fuck ever, man. At the end of the day, that's just kind of part of life. You're gonna experience shit. It is what it is. At the end of the day, though, it's still gonna be your choice whether you decide to follow that or you decide not to. Doesn't matter what the median is that you end up getting it from. Let's just call a spade a spade. Let's just call a spade a spade. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't want that stuff, if you don't want to be associated with those things, then you don't talk about those things. You know what I'm saying? And you should try to distance that stuff from your content. Unless you're comfortable with that type of stuff and you try to pass it off as a joke when it clearly isn't. That's what Darksydephil's biggest problem was. And that's what a lot of people, detractors or otherwise, were like, yeah, Darksydephil's not racist. He's not racist. He's just a fucking idiot. He just does stupid jokes. He's just as hateful as anybody else. And it's not even a matter that he hides it well. It's just the fact that because he doesn't come out and fucking try to preach, you know what I'm saying, what is it called, for the white ethno state or whatever the case may be, doesn't make him any less racist. You know what I'm saying? Just because he was cool with fucking T. Carter doesn't mean he wasn't using him for his own ends. And he underlined actually had a resentment against him, which is even more amazing about the T. Carter shit. Do I think T. Carter was really his friend? I think T. Carter thought he was Phil's friend. I think Phil only used T. Carter as a means to an end, to be honest. And he didn't mind profiting off of him. Phil doesn't mind profiting off of anybody, live or dead. He doesn't value anybody. Is he a hateful person? Yeah. Does he hate everybody equally? That's debatable. It depends on the level of comfort he can have in hating you, or liking you, or even tolerating you. And that's really what that comes down to. And no one wants to talk about that because no one is comfortable with the idea that, okay, well, we all have our personal biases. We all have this, that, and the third. And if you have to address Phil's nonsense, then you kind of have to address something in yourself. And no one wants to really do that, which is ironic because when people talk about how unhealthy Phil is, a lot of them immediately reflect on themselves and think, well, damn, man, I'm not in the best shape either. Or damn, man, maybe I need to change my eating habits. Or damn, man, maybe I should change my outlook on life. These aren't bad things. These aren't something that we should be trying to shy away from. If you don't want to speak on that, so be it. Don't try to defend him to make yourself feel comfortable, though. Don't do that. That's not going to work. That's one of the problems that you have overall as it pertains to people who try to hide behind jokes to cover up racism and all kinds of other dumb shit anyway. If everybody was just honest about that shit, there'd be less to be mad about. You understand who believes in what, and everybody knows where everybody stands. See, no one want to do that. Everybody wants to play cloak and dagger, and everybody wants to act like, oh, I'm not really associated with that, or I'm not cool with that, or I don't believe in that. And then next thing you know, you catch them in a Discord, or you catch them on some type of recorded conversation saying some bullshit that they probably shouldn't have been saying, but they thought they were comfortable, though. They thought they were in the privacy amongst other people, and they didn't expect anybody to rat them out. It happens. It happens quite a bit. And on YouTube, on Twitch, on Twitter, all that shit. People get exposed for that shit all the time. People get exposed for that shit all the time. And you think Darksydephil is above any of that?
Decision when a child and or teenager is mature enough to watch stuff. But my feeling is, when I was a teenager, I started watching mature stuff, R-rated movies. That's what I equate my stuff with. It's R-rated movie, okay? And my parents would let me watch some and not let me watch other stuff. Generally, if it was on TV, my parents, when I was a teenager, would let me watch it. They didn't give a shit. So, it really is a parent's decision, but ultimately, I think my content is probably around your teenage years is when my content starts to make sense. You'll start to get some of the more adult humor, the mature jokes. And I don't think that any teenager, as long as they're not completely idiotic, is going to go and start, oh, hey baby, look at those big titties, right in the middle of like the classroom or something. You know what I mean? If you do that, you're a fucking idiot. And you know that I'm doing it because it's not a real person, it's joking around, it's a video game. You don't do that to people in real life. It's just for comedy and entertainment when I do it. I don't do that in real life either. I don't walk up to Pandalini and say, hey baby, nice giant heaving boobies or anything like that, you know. So, you know there's a line. Once you're mature enough to understand that line between comedy and the real world, that's really when I think you should be able to watch my content. I don't think there's an age you can put on that. It's more of a judgment of your parents, honestly. That's my honest feeling.
Interesting way to play that, but make of that what you will. 2 quick examples, Phil, then we can move on. So, Sidella calling all black people North American apes, and Derek on Twitter complimenting male, female, and let's not talk about that third part, because is complimenting male and female porn stars on certain performances on Twitter in a public space. And with that being said, for all the people that clown Derek and all that shit, to be honest, when you get past how absurd that shit is, like, Derek was complimenting some chick on her first anal scene and shit. That's like, all right, bro. Like, you going into crazy detail. You must have watched that a couple times. Whatever. It means you got more stamina than Phil, I guess. Point being is, I will say that Derek's brave. He's brave as fuck. Now, granted, there are a lot of very heavily invested porn star fans who kind of do that. Derek, in his own way, is unique even from them. Like, when he's out there on Twitter saying some of the shit he's saying, he says it with no fear. I'll give Derek that. He says it with no fear, and in a weird sort of way, he says it with the type of honesty that you can't find in people anymore, to be honest. Like, the type of honesty where he doesn't care what people think. He's like, you know, hey, I congratulated that dude on his scene and whatnot, and I really enjoyed his scene, and that's that. He doesn't care that people might take that misconstrued and be like, yo, do you swing that way? Or whatever the case may be, or he doesn't care. He only thinks about what's in the moment, and he says what he says. In some ways, there's something rather, I don't know if I'd go as far as calling it courageous, but there's something very bold about it. I'll give him that. I give him that much, that he's comfortable with himself, that he can say that. I think it's a bit much. I think that clearly you recognize that these are real people and they're performers, but you're heavily invested in something that, unless you're planning on going into the business itself, like you're planning on becoming like a recruiter because there are, you know, positions for stuff like that, or you're planning on going into directing, or you're going into some type of marketing, unless you're trying to make that a career, you're investing a lot in that. And porn addiction is a thing. So, and I'm not saying that's DSP's fucking responsibility. It's not. What I'm saying is that in a lot of ways, Derek embodies some of the things that he's saying right now, and you're clearly seeing it, and some of it is rather disturbing. It's rather disturbing what Derek does on his free time. A little bit. It's his free time. He can do what he wants, but that shit's a bit problematic. And he's starting to, in a lot of the same way that Phil is, he's starting to lose his grip. And so when this dude eventually gets a girlfriend himself, he's gonna be in for a rude awakening. when he gets into a relationship, especially if he becomes sexual, because he's not going to be able to separate the fantasy from what reality is. And a lot of the ways that fucks over Darksydephil. And I think, honestly, that's the reason why his view on sex is the way it is. I think Phil has been desensitized. I think he's watched so much of it, and he couldn't live up to what he was seeing, that it's made him slowly but surely hate it. That's a personal theory of mine, but I feel like it's not too far off the mark. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to go into the whole Britney Venti type thing and say porn is bad and we need to burn all that bullshit. Fuck all that. I'm not doing all that. At the end of the day, do what you want. But there is, for some people, it can be very desensitizing, and that can have a lot of negative effects on a relationship. So that's just something to think about. But I think as it pertains to Derek, to some extent, not as much as like someone like an Ann Lee, because I'm not going to cheer for him like that. Even though I do respect what Ann Lee does, I'm not going to go out my way like that for Derek. But there is something rather you can appreciate how bold Derek is at times. I think it's excessive though. It's very excessive, but I think it's you can give him some credit for that. But that's what happens though, ladies and gentlemen, when you look at DSP's fan base. You have a lot of these people who go off into these heavy extremes for various reasons, and you're seeing a lot of the worst possible fucking qualities that come out of them. Blame whoever you want to blame if you feel that someone needs to be blamed. But all I'm saying is Darksydephil didn't help. He really didn't. And he knows exactly who the fuck watches his content. He has an understanding of their ages and everything. I'm not saying that he has to be responsible, but I'm saying he should be mindful. That's all I'm saying. You can't save everybody. If you try to, you'll end up saving no one. But he should be a bit more mindful. He should have been, I should say.
All right, one more question, I think, and then I'm going to have to stop this this part. Phil, you said many times in your older videos that you spent a considerable amount of time playing and practicing in fighting games such as Street Fighter during the 90s and early to mid and even late 2000s. As a result, you stated that you never really had time to play other major releases during that time. In retrospect, do you regret putting aside such a large amount of time on one genre of games when you could have been playing a larger variety of different games? And do you think you accomplished what you set out to do in the fighting game community? And that's from Terror Hurts, okay?
Evil laugh. I'm sorry. I want him to read the question again in full. And then we start cutting this up. Take it all in, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, one more question, I think, and then I'm going to have to stop this this part. Phil, you said many times in your older videos that you spent a considerable amount of time playing and practicing in fighting games such as Street Fighter during the 90s and early to mid and even late 2000s. As a result, you stated that you never really had time to play other major releases during that time. In retrospect, do you regret putting aside such a large amount of time on one genre of games when you could have been playing a larger variety of different games? And do you think you accomplished what you set out to do in the fighting game community? And that's from Terror Hurts, okay? Do I regret spending all of that time? Let me put it this way. There are times when I do regret the fact that I was only playing Street Fighter and I did miss out on a lot of stuff. I look back now and I say, damn, I'm 30 years old, and there was a lot of time that I was spent in arcades, traveling to play Street Fighter, that I could have been doing other things that younger people do. Whether it was playing other video games, whether it was doing other kinds of cool stuff that younger people do. And especially now that my back's messed up, I do kind of have a little bit of a sadness there that maybe there were some physical things that I would have liked to do, like backpacking through areas and stuff that I can't do now because of my back, okay? At the same time...
As someone who goes camping and who enjoys camping, I know that seems rare, but it's a thing. You know what I'm saying? My parents sent us to camps. Not to make it sound like that, but I've gone to summer camp before and I actually enjoyed it. Shit. I couldn't see Darksydephil camping. I definitely couldn't see him hiking. Not at all. Not at all. I could not see him doing that shit. Seeing him camping for 2 or 3 days, he'd be a mess by the time we get back to civilization. No. You remember how beat down they were in the Blair Witch, the first one, not the garbage that came later. He would be like that after a couple days. He'd be completely fucking disheveled. Even though there's nothing to panic about, you didn't have to worry about bears, you didn't have to worry about any of the nonsense and shit that you may run into, depending on where you're at. He's definitely someone who would get disoriented very, very quickly if someone isn't holding his fucking hand. I could see that very, very clearly. He's not one of those type of people. He's really not. I understand he enjoys this little kitty pet zoos and everything, and good for him. But he's not gonna camping, hiking, anything that has to do with the outdoors is not DSP's life. Ladies and gentlemen, this idiot couldn't even take care of plants. He bought 3 plants off Patreon money and couldn't take care of that shit. The garden that Panda had in the back, he let die off. Let's call a spade a spade. From his house, there are like some hills and shit that you can actually see. And Catherine had talked about she was interested in going out there one day, maybe biking or whatever the case may be. He came up with all kinds of excuses why he couldn't do that, or why, maybe we can drive out there, but I don't really want to do much anything else. He's not about that life, and that's okay. There's a lot of people who aren't interested in that stuff, and that's cool. So, you know what I'm saying? It is what it is, but don't sit there and try to lead on that, oh, because of my back, I can't do this. Because of my back, I can't do that. Nah, let's not play that. Let's not play that game.
I don't regret the experiences that I got out of Street Fighter, okay? I met people across the entire country. I met people from Canada, from Mexico, from Puerto Rico, from Japan, from Europe. I met people from the entire world, and I traveled to Chicago, to Florida, to Texas, to Las Vegas, to California multiple times. All the tri-state, New York, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, Maine, all the way down to Virginia, to Maryland, all these places, Georgia, I would have never visited, or if I would have, I might have not had a chance or an opportunity to visit it in the way that I did because of Street Fighter. So in that regard, I had a blast. The people that I met, the friends that I made, the fun that I had, the competitive nature of Street Fighter, I wouldn't give that up for the world, okay? Now, as to saying, do I feel that I accomplished what I set to do in the fighting game community? Well,
okay, hold on. Let me cut back in. I kind of meant to jump in a little earlier. For all the things, all the people that he met, and for all the things that he, and all the experiences that he has. Hold on a second.
Did because of Street Fighter.
Okay,
so in that regard,
for all the experiences that he's had, and for all the people that he met, he has said multiple times, especially when it comes to Evo. And some of the actual states that they went traveling to, they didn't really do much of anything else. They came into town, immediately went to the hotel and whatnot, went ahead and checked in, makes sense, go down to the tournament venue, wait for some other people to show up, and just chill there and watch matches, basically. He didn't do much of anything else. Maybe they went out to eat somewhere. Didn't go to any strip clubs, didn't go to any after hour spots or whatever. Like, they only went to places that were close or they ordered food. When he was in Vegas, he didn't even go and see the strip. He went out there multiple years and didn't see or do anything in Vegas. He didn't go to any of the shows. He didn't get to ever see the strip. He didn't get to partake in nothing. You know what I'm saying? And that's the whole point of them holding Evo in Vegas, was so you could go out and do other things while you're waiting for your matches or whatever. Or while, it wasn't just the tournament. You know what I'm saying? You could do other things as well. Multiple years, he pissed all that shit away. If he got bopped out of the tournament, he went upstairs and played video games in his room. So, yet again, all those missed opportunities are his fault. Nobody else's. No one told him to be stuck up in his fucking room practicing, or to sit around and watch and wait for hours on end to watch other matches when he had a clear idea of when his matches were coming up. He could have went out and did some other things. Shit, even after the tournament had broke for the night, especially in Vegas. Vegas don't sleep, so there's plenty of shit he could have gone and did. He chose not to. That's his fault. That's where the clear waste of time came in. And then, let's talk about the waste of money. You spent, holy shit, you spent thousands upon thousands of dollars to go to all these, to each one of these individual tournaments, and don't got a damn thing to show for it. You don't have a cool story. You don't have nothing. You don't have anything to show from that. You have no experiences. You have no pictures of none of that shit. You don't have nothing. You did nothing. You did nothing. And the only experiences that we do have that we can prove is all the money matches that fucking he essentially got raped in, right? Like, these guys took turns. Like, they ran a train on him, dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's brutal, but it's true. They ran a train on him. There are fucking events out there where this dude dropped hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in money matches, knowing damn well that he didn't have a chance to win any of those things. Matter of fact, one of those money matches that's like, it was when he was playing that one dude. He lost like two or 400 to this dude. There's an even older match. Well, not even older. It's probably a little bit after this one. There's another money match they had for like $500 in this arcade. The arcade's about to close. It was in like Marvel 2. And DSP gets beasted there too. Got beasted. And the dude sitting there being like, yeah, he put up a good fight, man. It was really close, blah, 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 blah. And everybody's like, well, wow, that's pretty nice of him. He's trying to give, Phil some respect. No, he's not trying. I mean, he probably is. But in actuality, he's giving Phil positive reinforcement because that keeps Phil playing. If you completely take this dude's money and then demoralize him, he's not going to want to play you no more. But if you have someone like Phil who's egotistical as shit, it's not pride, okay? I understand people like to tell you that. It's not pride. It's fucking his ego. It's arrogance. It's not pride. There's a difference. But it's because of his fucking ego and shit, right? And how arrogant he is and how his thought of superiority is above everybody else. You need people like that to keep playing. And they will keep playing you if they think they have a chance. If they think there's even an iota that they can beat you for that little bit of clout, then fuck it. Go ahead, keep playing me. And I'll take $1,000 off you. I'll take $2,000 off you over the span of years. And then you get that one match that you do beat me. And you get your little, $100 and shit, and you have your moral victory. And you're running around now on the SRK thread saying, I'm the shit. I finally beat him. Did that guy lose anything? He bled you for, let's say, for example, this guy bled you for over $1,000, beat you in multiple high-end money matches and shit. That is proven, that is recorded, that somebody has, and you beat him once. He doesn't lose. You don't lose in that situation. In that situation, he loses one match. Let's say he loses $100, and then guess what? The next time he's at a tournament, and you're at that tournament, he can go ahead and get on SRK and be like, "Yo, where's Darksydephil at? Yo, Darksydephil, you want to play some money matches, bruh? What you doing?" And DSP is gonna jump right on it because. DSP is going to jump right on that shit. Or anybody would who's like DSP. Because they're like, oh shit, I beat him that one time. Maybe I can beat him again. Maybe I can beat him again. It's the gambling mindset. And that right there, I've read that off old threads on how people used to milk other people and goat them in the money matches and shit. There's a psychology behind all that. There's obviously a level of sociology as well. That's what you do to people like Darksydephil. You bleed them. And if you can get your friends in to get a piece, let them get a piece too. Because it ain't no fun if the homies don't get none. And that's what happened. Like that one tournament when he ain't talk shit about them Florida boys, and then they ran a train on him for, I don't know, a couple $100 altogether? Or a few hundred, I should say. There's a reason for that. You can feel bad for Darksydephil if you want to. And I'm not going to encourage you to do that, but if you feel that way, it's understandable. But that's his own ignorance that came back on him. I don't feel bad for that. He a grown-ass man. And when he came onto YouTube, he wanted you guys to respect him as such. And when he came on YouTube, after his failed stint in the FGC, he didn't tell you about none of the money matches. He didn't tell you about all that bullshit with them fights and shit. He didn't tell you how he ain't popped his mouth off and then almost got popped in the mouth for it. He didn't tell you guys none of that.
Blast, the people that I met, the friends that I made, the fun that I had, the competitive nature of Street Fighter, I wouldn't give that up for the world, okay? Now, as to saying, do I feel that I accomplished what I set to do in the fighting game community? Well, what did I really do? What I did is I kind of proved that someone who doesn't really dedicate themselves full time, because I didn't, it was my hobby. I wasn't spending hundreds of hours a week doing it like some people, and I'll say it, Justin Wong, he was playing these games hundreds of hours a week. He was every day playing like 6 to 8 hours to get as good as he did. He was traveling to every single tournament. That's why Justin Wong is so damn good at what he does, because he's a hard fucking worker, okay? And I do hate people that kind of say,
I'm gonna have to slap you on that one. First off, he's right. Justin Wong put a lot of time into what he does. Hold on a second.
Are we doing it like some people? And I'll say Justin Wong.
Yeah, he brought up Justin Wong on purpose, and his hatred for Justin Wong is actually rather amusing, to say the very least. And it is hatred too. Don't think anything different. I wouldn't say it might not be unbridled hatred. He's definitely mad because he doesn't have what Justin has. Justin has been let me try to put this in such a way, because believe it or not, there's actually quite a few documentaries on Justin Wong out there. Justin Wong is blessed with two things: with work ethic, a very good one, and with the genius behind that. Justin is not unbeatable. It's more of the thing that makes Justin so dangerous, and why I wouldn't say people feared him, because that wouldn't be fair, and even he wouldn't agree with that. But why it was such a daunting task to play Justin is because it's a war of attrition. Justin can dictate a match to basically his momentum, to his pace, and that's dangerous, because even the fastest match he can slow down, or if he gets the footing in to slow it down, he will, and dictate it to his pace. He is very much someone who has very good command, generalship, if you will, when it comes to matches. And he's also very, very smart. He's someone who will play each and every fucking matchup that he can get his hands on with whoever is a relatively good guy, or even the top guy, and he can make shit happen because he remembers a lot of what happens. Now, that doesn't make Justin undefeatable. He's been beaten. He's been beaten plenty of times. He's been beaten in some really high-end matches. Jesus Christ. Fucking DSP has beaten Justin Wong. He beat him at an EVO qualifier one year. And then had the nerve, after beating Justin, to call out Daigo. And lucky Daigo didn't show up. But, so Justin's not unbeatable. The reason why Justin is as respected is because Justin didn't focus on one game. He played multiple games. And he's a multiple champion in multiple games at a time where the best of the best were there, and he was keeping up with them. On top of that, Justin's younger than DSP. You know what I'm saying? Like, the reason why DSP calls him a kid is because Justin's much younger than DSP. So that's another thing. On top of that, Justin's well-liked and well-respected because he treated people with respect. Even with all of his notoriety and his prestige and everything else that he has, he still treated people like people. He didn't look down upon people like DSP did. You know what I'm saying? And he didn't duck anybody. Anybody who wanted a piece of Justin, they could come get it. If you want, well, meaning in in the game, obviously. No one's trying to run around and fight Justin Wong for any reason and whatnot. You wanted money matches with Justin, you got your cash coming up. You know what I'm saying? Get that ass taxed too. Anybody could get it if they wanted it. And he didn't make excuses when he lost. You know what I'm saying? Now, there's some questionable shit out there on Justin, like there is on anybody, about how he felt about certain players, but that's something we can get into another time. But essentially, he treated everybody with respect. And the guy had a natural talent, and he was willing to work at it. If DSP is trying to portray what he's trying to tell you, oh, I have all this God-given talent, but, I didn't work hard enough at it, and that's why I didn't get to the heights that I could have gone. Then why the fuck did you hold on to EVO 2005 for as long as you did? Why the hell did you hold on to that 4th place finish? Why the fuck are you holding on to EVO qualifiers if it's just a hobby? That shit don't make no sense. It clearly meant more to you than what you're saying. And then, even when it comes to EVO 2005, he's still lying because he grinded the fuck out of that game. He got called out for that, actually, on the radio by Bumpkin on the, Alphaism on the Alphaism radio. It's on Mr. Huff Stuff's channel. I plan to go over it. He called him out on that shit when he lost it to Keto. He was like, I thought you were supposed to be a fucking super turbo specialist. I think he said an AE specialist, anniversary edition. I think he said he was like, you're like supposed to be like an AE specialist and shit. Why are you calling that dude a scrub and you lost to him? And DSP really didn't have an answer. He could come up with all his little excuses, but none of them were an answer. And like I said, Justin didn't just sit there and grind out games. Triforce, to his credit, made Justin marketable. And Justin has decent business, well, he has good business sense, I would say. He has good business sense in himself. So, like, he put himself in the right places. It wasn't just sitting there grinding out on a game and expecting to get all this popularity and all this fame and shit. He had to do shit, too. And DSP never understood that. You know what I'm saying? Being a noted player, right? And then being a champion are two separate things. You know what I'm saying? You have your competitors, you have your contenders, and then you have your champions. DSP is not a champion. He was barely a competitor. He was never really a contender. He was never really a contender. He wasn't good enough. And if it's because, it's just a hobby, then so be it. But then stop running around telling people that your name should be in the conversation with the greats. It doesn't deserve to be. You're the one right here saying that you didn't put as much time in as all these other guys, so why should you get the type of recognition they do? Hey, you don't have any of the wins. You don't have any of the championships, I should say. You don't have any of the championships that even regard you to be put up in that shit. Dude, if you actually go on YouTube, you can actually, or on Twitter, actually. If you go to FGC Twitter, and if you go to, like, I would say Kappa on Reddit, but you go to any of the fighting game, like eccentric, like, Reddit posts or whatever, or Reddit threads, I should say. There are Dominion, PR Balrog, Filipino Champ, oh my god, what's dude's name? Chris G, IFC Yipes. You can find pictures of what their trophy cases look like. That's what champions look like. And they don't look light. You know what I'm saying? Phil just looks light. He looks soft compared to those guys. There's a difference. There's a difference. There's a big difference. Phil can never ever compete up against any of those guys. And that's a shame too, because allegedly there is somebody, or somebodies I should say, who are looking to write a book about the history of competitive FGC, competitive Street Fighter in particular. And there's a lot of, which is not anything new. I'm sure there's a couple books out there already, but there's someone looking to do that over the next couple years. And DSP's name, if he is listed, it'll be a side note. I'd be surprised if he even got a page in that book. And that's if that book even materializes. If he gets a paragraph, he'll be lucky. He will literally be just a footnote, an author's notation when it comes to the history of the FGC. Period. Period. He will not be remembered for anything. Except for assholes like me who take the time to fucking bring up some dumb shit he did as it pertains to the FGC. He won't be remembered for not a goddamn thing. There are so many names, old and new, who will outshine him, who will outweigh him, who have done more for the FGC than he ever could imagine. DSP, for the most part, and for all intents and purposes, did for self. That's all. That's his main claim to fame. That's it. You helping to co-organize one tournament, you going ahead to a couple of locals, or even helping to run a couple of locals, doesn't help nearly as much in the grand scheme of things. But all that nonsense where you picking fights with people, you making websites dedicated to hating on people, all that nonsense, you being part of Team Hate and allegedly, you know what I'm saying, threatening violence on people and people might actually get hurt, And when people were going to have to take some responsibility for something, you decided to leave Team Hate because you didn't want none of that shit coming down on you because shit was starting to get real and people might really start getting hurt on your side and their side. Yeah, people aren't going to sit there and give you any type of acknowledgement for that. Sorry. So, just something to think about. And if that book does ever come out and whatnot, and if any of these channels still exist, I'll definitely talk about that book. Because I'm definitely going to be interested in seeing that if it ever materializes, of course. So that's a thing. But I'll be surprised if DSP even gets a paragraph or two in that. If he's even remembered. You know how many random ass people came out of nowhere, played for a couple years, and then faded out? What makes Darksydephil any different?
I accomplished what I set to do in the fighting game community. Well, what did I really do? What I did is I kind of proved that someone who doesn't really dedicate themselves full time, because I didn't, it was my hobby. I wasn't spending hundreds of hours a week doing it like some people, and I'll say it, Justin Wong, he was playing these games hundreds of hours a week. He was every day playing like 6 to 8 hours to get as good as he did. He was traveling to every single tournament. That's why Justin Wong is so damn good at what he does, because he's a hard fucking worker.
If Justin Wong was playing 6 to 8 hours a day, how is he putting in hundreds of hours a week then? I'm sorry, I can do math. So someone want to try to help me out with that? Okay, I was wondering. I was just curious. Justin put in a little over what the minimum work week would be, more or less. And he made quite a bit of money doing it. It took time, obviously, but he made quite a bit of money. Even with the and I'm not even necessarily talking about the tournament take. I'm just talking about like in money matches alone, Justin made a killing. He made a killing. And we're not talking about little pissy-ass money matches, too. We're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of dollars up for grabs. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if it was on the level of when Clockwork faced... what was that kid's name? I think the dude's name was like Joker or something. He was from Canada. He played... Shit, Clockwork beat that kid for 15 grand. People backed them financially to have that shit go down. Like, that's what type of money that was running around in that back in those days. You know what I'm saying? In the early mid 2000s, even all the way up to like 2010, 2012 maybe, even around this time and shit, money matches were still getting crazy if the grudge match was good enough. DSP was never involved in any of that. But whatever. Just throwing it out there. Here's the point. And I'm an asshole, so you would expect me to do this. If you really look at Darksydephil's accomplishments, he didn't really accomplish anything. What he accomplished was putting himself into debt, chasing something that he couldn't even obtain. That's what he was able to accomplish. He can have his moral victories and all that. He can have that. I'm not even mad at it. But if you want to look at it on the grand scheme of it, he didn't really accomplish much of anything. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is truly the sad part. That is actually truly the sad part.
And I do hate people that kind of say, oh, he's just good. No, he was a hard-ass worker to get to where he got, okay? I never did that, but I was still able to be successful in my Street Fighter career. I was placing in tournaments. I got 4th place at the Nationals of EVO. I won the East Coast qualifier of EVO 2 years in a row, and in 1 year I traveled to all the EVO qualifiers and placed in every single one of them except for one. I even went to the West Coast qualifier, who most people on the West Coast hate my guts, and I got 5th place in their qualifier. So, yeah, I think it's a big accomplishment to say...
Wait. You said that you won that qualifier, though. Now you took 5th? And who the fuck brags about 5th? Oh, sorry, the same idiot that brags about 4th. My bad. Oh, that's the first time I've heard you say that. You got 5th at that West Coast qualifier? I swore you said you won that qualifier. I know you didn't, but... you placed 5th. I'm gonna have to clip this. I gotta clip this because I'm working on this little like DSP FGC collage of all the times that he talks about his questionable shit or whatever, and like something that you would find like like a David Davison or a Mr. Huffstuff or a Mighty D, you know, someone of their talent would do. I'm trying to slowly but surely bring all of that together. And this right here is going to be quite the gem and all that. Yikes, you took 5th? I swore that you said you took... I swore he said he won that tournament. But I thought he really only took like 3rd. I didn't know you took 5th. Yikes. But I think that's the same tournament that he said that they rigged the brackets against him. Because he was East Coast, they were West Coast, and they wanted to make sure their guys won. I don't know. I'm going to have to look now. He went out there multiple years, and he complained every time he lost on some bullshit anyway. So it is what it is. But this right here will definitely be a gem to definitely capture.
Things are there. And even though people might dispute them and say, oh, it wasn't the right version of the game, and this or that, and they try to find technicalities to write off what I've done, the fact remains that my rankings will be there forever, and you can't take that away from me. Okay? Now my life has changed.
That's not necessarily the case. So, they can take that away if people stop archiving it. The sites that have it, if those sites go down, then that shit's lost to history unless it's archived somewhere else. Secondly, this was a joke, clearly, but someone went and looked, and they probably could do it if they choose to. If someone decided to go to Wikipedia and put the petition in to have you erased from that Evo ranking for that 4th, they probably could. Now, there would be no reason to do that, and they would have to have a pretty good reason to expunge it. But let's be honest, Wikipedia is known for ghosting information for one reason or another. You wouldn't want that to happen, Phil. And SRK isn't going to be up forever. And as far as I know, outside of a couple of dedicated Discords, there isn't a whole lot of people archiving old-ass tournament fucking results from like 15 plus years ago and shit. I hope you're archiving it somewhere, because last thing you need is any of your supposed rankings to just go ahead and fall by the wayside. Most people in the FGC don't even really know who you are anymore. The old heads do, but most of the young guys have never heard of you, and if they have, it's certainly been, in a negative sort of way that doesn't behoove them, if you will, to go ahead and look into you further. Just something to think about. Just something to think about, champ.
And I'm doing things that are more mainstream, but I'm still playing fighting games and enjoying them. So now I like the fact that I have this pro background, and I can give that kind of background and education to a whole new breed of gamers. So do I regret what happened with Street Fighter?
And this is when he was still saying that he was a former pro fighting game player, even though now he says he's not a pro fighting game player because he wasn't sponsored. So keep that in mind. He was still holding on to that too.
Absolutely not. I enjoyed it, even though it was a lot of time investment, a lot of money investment, and I missed out on a lot of other stuff that I could have been doing. I think that really, it gave me a perspective to be able to be a pro, but also a common gamer at the same time right now, and that's why a lot of the stuff that I do on YouTube is kind of unique, and I think that's why a lot of people enjoy my content. So, no, I don't regret it. I do feel that I am accomplished in the Street Fighter community, and let's leave it at that. So that's it for part 1 of Ask the King.
Oh boy. This was fun. This was fun, I gotta admit. I was accomplished, and let's leave it at that. Boy, I could pick that shit apart all day, son. All day, son. Alright, ladies and gentlemen. So that's the end of that. Give me a minute to go ahead and square up. We will reconvene for final thoughts on our first, our pilot episode of Oust the King. And then I'll let you guys go on your way for today and whatnot. Yeah. I'll see you guys in just a second. Holy shit. That's crazy, son. That's crazy. right. We'll go for this. We'll go with this for now and whatnot. You guys need to have your punch cards ready anyway. All right, guys. So, there was so much shit to cover. I didn't expect there to be so much. Even though I had previously listened to it, that was like a week ago, but there was a lot to pull. In any case, ladies and gentlemen, this is, like I said, our pilot episode of Ousting the King, or Oust the King, and whatnot. Like I said, there are some takes that I have to agree with him on to an extent. A lot of them, obviously, I didn't. A lot of nitpicking. That's what I do. On top of that, though, too, I think, more importantly, this right here goes back to the whole reason why I started this channel, and the fact of going back and looking at DSP lore. There's a lot of what you see back then, in a lot of ways, makes sense on why he is the way he is now, and also just how his views have changed over the years, and not for the better, not for his benefit. The lack of responsibility or accountability, even when it comes to a lot of his viewpoints and everything, haven't really changed too much. It's still always somebody else's fault. It's everybody else's problem. He's still the victim. You know what I'm saying? You are expected to be able to follow these particular guidelines, and if you can't, that's your fault, or your parents' fault, or whoever who pays the internet bill. His FGC stuff at the end, I was really, really surprised on how he fell back off that. Because I expected way more fight for somebody who spent all these years talking about 4th place at EVO, yada, yada, yada. He gave that up rather quickly. His advice on starting a YouTube channel, or gaming YouTube, if you will. Yet again, he doesn't really understand the struggle because he didn't really come up in that. He came in, for all intents and purposes, in a privileged position, being that he was one of the first, if you will. But he didn't really have to deal with anything else. And because of that, it shows why he is the way he is now. Struggle is not a bad thing. It builds character. You know what I'm saying? And it gives you more of an appreciation for what you have. If everything is just given to you, then you don't learn any of those things. And you don't know how to develop a personality or develop some character. Just because he is a character doesn't mean he has character. And I think that right there explains the reason why he's suckling at the cult the way he does, in the same fashion that he does to his own parents for money, as for everything else. The moment things get tough, ask for help. Immediately go and get help. Don't try to sit there and figure it out. Don't sit there and try to work it out. That's too much. Just go to someone else and get help. And I think these older ATKs, as I'm going to call them, will prove that unequivocally that that's what his MO is. And you're going to see the progression as time goes on. I'm going to jump around. I'm not going to do everything by year. And as I said, there's 3 parts to this. I only did 1. Do I have part 3 up here? No, I don't. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to jump around a little bit. And by year and so on and so forth, I have some 2013s, I have some 2014s, got some 2016s, some 2015s, a couple of them from 2017. There's a lot here and whatnot. And then, like I said, we can always, if there's something you guys really want to see, we could take requests at a later time and date. But that's what the scenario is going to be. And like I said, we're still going to go over the begging videos. We're still going to do some Street Fighter lore, because that shit's fucking fantastic. But these ATKs, he wasn't afraid to speak on people. There are some episodes where he speaks on Spoonie. He speaks on a bunch of people. And so I want to those are some of the things I'm going to pick out, and we'll get into it. We'll see what's what. Yet again, my apologies as it pertains to, it's just been a while that I put any videos out. Got a lot of stuff going on and whatnot. But when I do, you know what I'm saying, I'll try to definitely get what I can out there when I can. And as I said, I want to try to work on some streaming stuff and whatnot, and get some live broadcasts eventually in the works, sooner than later. So that's the thing. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for showing up to to this particular segment, to this pilot episode, if you will. Appreciate you guys listening in, and don't forget your Snortbucks Coffee punch cards, and I'll see you guys for the next video / broadcast, whenever that may be, hopefully sooner than later. Take care of yourselves, guys. Later.